So, I woke up inside a novel, where everyone's destiny was set by the deity they worshipped, and I picked the forgotten goddess that the world wrote off as trash. Except I was the only soul who knew. She was actually the true goddess of luck. In this realm, every adult gets a single shot to toss an offering down a holy well, pray in front of a divine statue, and pray that deity welcomes them into their cult. Most folks stay stuck at rank 0 forever. A few lucky bastards make it to rank 1. Rank 2 is already a rare sight, and rank 5 is the absolute peak any modern mortal has ever hit. So, while every wealthy prospect queued up to worship Orion, Drake, the renowned god of wealth, I strolled right past his golden icon to hunt for a goddess with 0 disciples, no clergy, and not even a decent altar. The whole crowd mocked me when they saw my choice. Alia of the first step. To them, she was just a nursery-tier deity, a patron for babies, amateurs, and losers too pathetic to catch the eye of a real god. But I recalled a single line from the book that nobody else around here seemed to grasp. Gold isn't fortune. Gold is merely what's left behind once fortune has already moved on. When I first came to as Dorian West, I definitely didn't feel like a chosen savior. I felt like a dude who had just lost a brawl with a hard wooden floor. My face was glued to the freezing planks. My mouth tasted like copper and stale instant ramen, and my right hand was gripping a cracked smartphone, flashing a single, ugly alert on the screen. Faction trial signups. 3 days left. Right below, that was my bank account. $18.42. Yep, I'd body-hopped into a fantasy novel, and my starter pack was a killer migraine, a dying phone, and barely enough cash for lunch if I threw away my dignity. Fantastic. I haul myself up, nearly knocking over a pile of overdue bills. On the coffee table, eviction warning, academy final notices, urgent warnings. Every single one of them bore the exact same name. The documents all agreed on the core facts. Dorian West, 18 years old, unblessed, lacking any registered faction, a family sponsor, or an active divine mark. In a world like this, that wasn't just embarrassing. It was total social execution by paperwork. The memories rushed back in broken fragments. Mine, his, and the book's plotline were all jammed into my head, as if someone had tossed 3 hard drives right into a blender. I remembered dying. I remembered reading the novel. I remembered this whole city, and I knew for a fact that Dorian West was no hero. The actual protagonist was Carter Blaine, the golden boy, the ultimate chosen one. He's the guy who would eventually kneel before Orion. Drake, catch a blessing from the legendary god of fortune, and climb the ranks so fast that every elite family in America would start pretending they backed him. Since day one. Real inspiring stuff. Too bad I wasn't Carter Blaine. Instead, I was the broke loser, just 3 days away from the faction trials, rocking $18 and a body that looked like it survived solely on vending machine, junk food, and terrible life choices. I hauled myself over to the bathroom mirror. The kid staring back at me had exhausted gray eyes, a mess of black hair, a bruised jawline, and that haunted look of someone who just realized rent was past due in 2 different realities. I prodded the cut near my lip and winced. Looks like the original Dorian had just collapsed after getting shoved around outside a trial prep center. The night before, he hadn't been assassinated or poisoned. He'd been humiliated, viciously enough that his body just quit and handed the reins over to me. Pretty rude, honestly. My phone vibrated again. Mandatory candidate orientation. Central Divine Cathedral. Attendance compulsory for all unclaimed adults. So there, it was step 1 toward either a glorious divine future or a lifetime of being politely treated like absolute trash. The Central Divine Cathedral loomed right in the heart of downtown, looking like a megabank had married a temple and given birth to a massive golden fortress. Marble pillars, glass towers, security drones hovering over the main gate. A giant monument of Orion Drake dominated the front courtyard, one hand gripping a coin, the other resting on a book of packs. Hundreds of hopeful candidates packed the square. Some rocked tailored suits, others held velvet cases. A few even brought along family priests, muttering last-second prayers, acting like divine customer service reps. Then there were guys like me. Battered shoes, scuffed jacket, no sponsor badge, and an offering pouch. So, light it was basically just for show. Down by the steps, a woman gripped a silver bracelet with both hands as her son stepped under a scanning arch. The kid looked to be about my age, pale-faced and biting his lip, trying his best not to cry in public. A cathedral clerk grabbed the bracelet, dropped it onto a golden platter, and slid it right into the offering well. Right by the entrance, the well flashed for a split second, then went completely dead. The scanner overhead chimed. Rank 0. The mom let out a noise I'll never forget. Not a loud scream, but something smaller and uglier, like her chest had just collapsed. The clerk didn't even bat an eye. Next applicant, he droned. A pair of guards escorted the kid away. When he tried to stumble back to the well, he didn't fight them. Making a scene only made things worse. Everyone in this world knew that. Getting ghosted by a deity was brutal enough, but throwing a tantrum afterward was social suicide with a cherry on top. That was the very first lesson Dorian West's memories taught me. The gods don't bother rejecting you out loud. Their silence does the trick. Inside the cathedral, the air reeked of incense, polished marble, pricey cologne, and sheer desperation. 7 main corridors branched off from the central lobby, each one belonging to a major faction. The Golden Dominion's hall was the biggest, and naturally, it had a line so massive. It wrapped all the way around a marble fountain, sculpted like a cascade of coins. The alternative chambers were for healing, war, law, tempests, and demise. Yet, nearly everyone kept staring toward Orion's gilded gates, since luck meant cash. Deals, a nicer place to live, superior schooling, top-tier medicine, better everything. Or well, that's what folks assumed. I drifted along with the unaligned hopefuls. Straight to the sign-up floor. A massive wall of monitors, detailed test windows suggested tributes, faction acceptance rates, and recent favor outcomes. Some backed prospect from the Golden Dominion had secured rank 2 just last week by putting up an estate title, 3 corporate stakes, and a blessed gold artifact. The crowd gaped like it was a holy miracle. I glanced down at my 18 bucks and 42 cents. Yeah, I was totally going to need another game plan, West. The words echoed from behind me, so bright and cocky it made my eye twitch. Spinning around, I spotted Blake Harrington. I recognized him from Dorian's past memories. Knew him right out of the book, Filthy Rich Family. Die-hard Golden Dominion supporter. Hair done up like he tipped his stylist in blood diamonds. And a smirk sharp enough to slice through taxes. He scanned me up and down, pausing on my beat-up kicks, and a shattered display on my phone. Blake sneered. Thought you quit after last night. And there it was, a busted face. Stabby clothes, no sponsor pin. He didn't check my actual balance. To sniff out the broke vibes, trust fund kids just catch on to that early. It's basically echolocation, except for targeting people they want to crush. I flashed him a weary grin. Gave it a shot, but misery builds character. At least, that's my selling point right now. His buddy, Trent Bishop, chuckled behind him. Trent was stockier, rowdier, and wore the deeply focused look of a guy who viewed doorways as riddles. Blake's eyes drifted down to my vacant tribute sack. You're seriously checking in? Blake scoffed. With what? Pocket change and a sob story? A few bystanders close by cracked up. I desperately wanted to fire back a witty comeback. Instead, my stomach gave a loud rumble. Impeccable timing. Trent cracked up even more. Damn, West. Even your insides are begging for food. Glancing over at him, I retorted, well, at least one part of me has some drive. That managed to elicit a few startled chuckles. Hardly a massive win. More like swatting a bear with a napkin. But I took whatever minor victory I could get. Blake held up a sleek, polished black case in one hand. Safely displayed, under glass inside, was a tiny golden scale carved with the image of Orion, Drake's emblem. My folks put together a proper tribute. He bragged. An authentic prosperity artifact. Straight from a registered Golden Dominion auction. Fully certified, blessed, and appraised. He paused, making sure everyone got a good look. Some of us actually care about our futures. I stared at the artifact, then glanced down the row of wealthy applicants, clutching display boxes just like his. Plush velvet, shining gold, silver contracts, and property deeds. Trinkets of inherited privilege, cleverly disguised as pure piety. And, right then, the underlying system of this world felt brutally uncomplicated. The impoverished offered actual sacrifice, while the wealthy simply offered up inventory. Yet, somehow, everyone just labeled it devotion. A chime echoed through the grand atrium. A cleric wearing a gold-trimmed robe walked onto an elevated dais right beneath Orion's monument. His voice boomed through the audio system, slick and well-rehearsed. Applicants, today you stand before the sacred order. Your tribute is your testament. Your plea is your request. Your selected deity determines your destiny. He extended his hand toward the Golden Hall. Choose wisely. A powerful faction can elevate you, but a weak one will surely ruin you. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The cleric went on. Once it is accepted, your faction's sigil tethers you to a single sacred path. No applicant can serve two deities. No applicant may alter their allegiance without an official release. exile or death. He uttered that final word with total composure, which honestly made it even creepier. One deity, one shot. In this future, that was the absolute law. And since pretty much everyone knew it, they all scrambled toward the same few celebrity deities. The popular gods raked in devotees' tributes, prayers, and massive clout. Their titles were stamped onto legislation, currency, medicine, warfare, and the media. Meanwhile, the forgotten gods had zip, which meant most folks figure the obscure ones were just weak, on account of being useless. But a different take crossed my mind. What if they were weak? Simply because everyone had stopped feeding them? The monitor by the altar, lit up with the names of tomorrow's spotlighted contenders, complete with corporate sponsors and projected matchups. One specific name caught my attention, Carter Blaine. He didn't have a rank or any official backing yet, just a crisp profile picture, and a mention that he'd been put forward for the Golden Dominion's review process. And there he was, the story's golden boy before hitting it big. For a split second, I actually had the dumb thought of riding his coattails. I mean, why not? I already knew how things would play out. I knew Orion's group was going to crush the early chapters. I knew the Golden Dominion possessed serious cash, influence, and security, plus enough arrogant pride to juice up a whole town. Then my eyes drifted to Blake's artifact. I looked over at that rejected kid, slumped by the exit, whose mother's bare hands were literally trembling over nothing. Finally, I checked out my own modest tribute bag. Orion Drake had thousands of applicants lining up today alone. The filthy rich and the corporate-backed ones. Folks showing up with so much wealth. It made my entire place look like a dumpster that happened to have running water. If I chose him, I'd just be another penniless loser, tossing spare change down a fountain that was already overflowing with diamonds. Yeah, hard pass. The briefing wrapped up, and the applicants bolted toward their targeted rooms. Blake brushed past me with Trent right by his side, the two of them heading straight for Orion's gilded entrance. Blake threw a look over his shoulder and muttered, "Hey, try not to make a total fool of yourself, West. Certain deities despise low-budget gifts." I replied, "Good thing. I'm not looking for a high-maintenance god." He chuckled, figuring I was just coping. To be fair, I totally was. I was coping on a professional level. Yet, my steps veered away from the Golden Hall. Dorian West's memories served to remind me that the old parish records were up on the second floor, where applicants could look through minor shrines, obsolete deities, household protectors, and all the other divine table scraps that anyone with a real backer wouldn't dare touch. The room was practically deserted. An elderly clerk lounged behind a glass partition, dozing off right next to a computer screen. He glanced up as I walked over, noticed I lacked a sponsor's badge, and instantly looked completely bored again. "Minor archive," he muttered. "Historical archive," I corrected. That made him hesitate, his gaze scanning me once more. Shabby clothes, a bruised face. No sacred relic case, no family cleric. No business poking around, asking sketchy questions. The historical archive requires candidate credentials, he stated. I flashed my phone displaying the orientation pass. An unbacked adult trial coming up in 3 days. He let out a sigh like I had personally ruined his whole afternoon. Keywords. My throat went completely dry because this was it, the very first real stride. Away from the path the book intended for me to tread. I could still backtrack. I could easily head back downstairs, wait in Orion's queue, tender my pathetic little nest egg, and pray the legendary god of luck would notice me for a split second. Maybe I'd hit rank 1, maybe I'd get squat. Perhaps the source would just fizzle out, turning me into another forgotten reject, kicked out by the security team. Instead, I leaned in toward the console and inputted the phrase I recalled from the book's neglected footnotes. Original path. The clerk scoffed. The monitor blinked for a moment. At first, nothing happened. Then, the entire search index condensed down to a solitary, confidential file, hidden beneath 3 tiers of obsolete shrine archives. The receptionist froze mid-chew on his bubblegum. First, a destination popped up. The barricaded hallway of the lower cathedral level. An abandoned chapel. Next, the document title started rendering character by character, as if the database itself was reluctant to utter the name aloud. It was the pseudonym of the first step, and right below her name, where a holy title belonged. The monitor flashed a solitary alert. 0 active devotees on record. The receptionist stared my way, like I just requested a map to a graveyard. "Kid," he muttered, his tone dropping its bored edge. Nobody prays to that one anymore. I forced a grin, despite my trembling hands. "Yeah," I replied. "That's the whole idea." The guy printed the permit, like he was passing me a death warrant, just with crisper presentation. A slender piece of ash-colored paper slid beneath the partition. Printed on it were 3 deceptively upbeat words. Lower cathedral entry. Directly underneath. The database added a crimson caveat. Neglected holy site. No staff assistance guaranteed. Fantastic. Even the architecture was giving me fair warning. If I kicked the bucket down there, it was entirely on me. The clerk kicked back and gave me one final look. He looked exhausted rather than irritated or concerned. Like a guy who'd watched way too many fools. Confused pure desperation with divine inspiration. Look, he said, once you start a shrine trail, the cathedral logs it. If you make a pledge and she takes it, you get what that entails, right? One deity, one faction. No backing out. Not unless someone carves the sigil out of your flesh, or you die. I tucked the entry slip away and walked away from the decrepit registry desk. Each stride toward the lower cathedral depths felt significantly heavier than the last. The golden sanctuary remained behind me, secure, radiant and bustling. Orion Drake's domain boasted choirs, clerics, velvet stanchions, wealthy dynasties, and enough wealth to make a dragon pay its dues. Aaliyah's track offered a drab scrap of paper, a red warning label, and me. Impressive crowd. I had just made it to the side stairs when a voice called out from behind me. West, of course. Blake Harrington was standing by the registry archway, with Trent Bishop right by his side, still holding that sleek relic container of his. Blake glanced down at the document gripped in my hand. "What's that you got?" he inquired. "Privacy." Trent chuckled. He tracked down a custodian's stairwell. Blake took a step closer and managed to catch a glimpse of the printed name. Before I could tuck it away, his grin grew wider. "Oh, this is absolutely gold." Hearing that from Blake was never a good sign. Blake raised his voice a bit, just loud enough for the surrounding candidates to hear. "Hey, Dorian, West is planning to praise Aaliyah of the first step." A few people looked over. One guy pulled up his applicant app, looked up the name, and scoffed once the page loaded. Trent peeked over his shoulder and began reading it out loud. Minor household benedictions, initial trials, novice direction, early youth turning points. He glanced up at me, smirking. "Bro, are you seriously begging for help to learn how to walk?" The giggles spread rapidly, sounding petty and malicious. It was that specific kind of murmur an audience makes right before someone gets destroyed. Blake drummed a manicured finger against his relic case. "Gotta hand it to you, West. I totally misjudged you," he remarked. "Usually, desperate hopefuls will at least commit themselves to an actual deity. But you've unearthed a goddess for infants." "She has a sanctuary," I countered. "She has a folder," Blake amended. "Defunct entities have folders." That particular comment stung more than I cared to admit, mostly because he wasn't entirely mistaken. The records indicated 0 active worshippers, no clergy, no attendants, and no current tributes left in this realm. Devotees sustained deities, devotion secured them. Tributes provided them the capacity to respond. A deity without adoration was typically just a ghost. With documentation, regardless of how much I hoped for a dormant titan, I squeezed the entry pass tighter and headed down into the stairwell. Blake trailed behind. Blake trailed behind. Trent tagged along too, since Trent seemed like the type to chase a fire. Alarm if he heard. He could throw some hands at the end. By the time we hit the basement cathedral level, I'd drawn a crowd. A blocked-off hallway waited at the bottom of the steps. It was a far cry from the marble halls upstairs. Ancient backup lights flickered along the ground, next to an iron gate with a scanner bolted onto it. There was none of that gold trim, floating illumination, or choral tracks from above. Trent pinched his nose shut. "So this is where they stash a deity?" Blake countered on. "This is where they dump one." I tapped my passkey against the reader. For a second, it did absolutely nothing. Someone in the back muttered, "Locked out by the door? That's a new low." Then the gate creaked open, corroded metal grinding against stone. The noise echoed down the hallway, sounding like something waking up pissed off. Nobody cracked a smile for a couple of seconds. A woman's voice cut through from behind me. "Dorian." I spun around to find Mira Caldwell at the gate. I knew her instantly from Dorian's memories. Highly intelligent, cautious, too low-key to be elite, yet too prominent to fade away. She had that serene look instructors loved, assuming it meant she was totally reliable. Mira glanced past Blake and Trent, then looked straight at me. "Are you seriously doing this?" she demanded. "Nope. I just came down for the lovely aroma." Her jaw set. She wasn't buying it. Tough crowd. She stepped closer and lowered her pitch. But the corridor echoed it perfectly anyway. "Elia is dormant," Mira warned. "If she takes you in, you'll be tied to a group with 0 backing. No temple funding, no assignments, no security, and no way to move up." Blake offered a slow clap from behind her. "Look at that. Even Caldwell thinks you're being dense." And she literally adopts sob stories for fun. Mira glared at him with ice in her eyes. I called it risky, but you brought the stupid all on your own. She faced me once more. You're down to a single path. If you're gonna place a bet on something that can actually talk back. See, that was the hitch. I figured Alia could answer. I just had no clue if she'd bother responding to me. I kept moving forward. The hallway culminated at a warped wooden door, featuring a fractured nameplate overhead. Alia of the first step. Forget about gold. Some sculpted effigy, or a consecrated blaze. The door merely bore a washed-out emblem, resembling a lone footprint impressed. Within an open ring, Blake cackled instantly. Her logo's afoot? Trent doubled over, gasping. Behold the almighty grace of baby steps. My eyes stayed glued to the mark. That footprint caught everyone's attention. Basic, feeble, pretty much juvenile. Yet the surrounding ring wasn't just for show. It was laced with tiny fractures, like pathways branching out from that single stride. Someone had gouged a majority of them out, but a few remained. For a fleeting second, my migraine flared up. A line from the book popped back into my head. Every journey has to start somewhere. I shoved the door open. Thick, gray blankets of dust coated the floor. Shattered pews propped up the walls, while dead candles rested on a side credenza, reduced to unsightly blobs of wax. At the far side, a stone plinth stood tall, right where an icon ought to be. Keyword, ought to be. No icon was in sight, just a vacant stand, and a parched sacrificial basin embedded in the floor out front. The pit was compact, circular, and lined with dark masonry. It lacked any shimmer, smoke, or remnant of devotion. A message was etched right along the border, though half of the text had been defaced. Kneeling down, I wiped the grime off the ledge. The legible phrasing read, "For the initial step preceding the journey." My heart skipped a beat. That didn't sound like some childish prayer at all. Mira noticed it as well, her face shifting ever so slightly. Blake lingered by the doorway, unwilling to step completely inside, as if destitution were catching. Well, he muttered, "Behold, the legendary temple of barely learning to crawl." Trent strolled over and kicked a shattered bench. The timbers smashed against the wall. "Watch it," I warned. "You'll make her mad." Trent stared at the vacant plinth. "Who?" "The invisible statue." The rest smirked, making my face flush. It seemed more deserted than sinister, like a living being had been taken, stripped of its identity, dumped in a cellar, and left for time to finish off. I approached the sacrificial well, my fingers twitching as I unzipped my bag. A couple of notes were inside, along with a receipt and a solitary old silver coin. It was scuffed, tarnished, and likely worth a single buck, unless fate had a wicked sense of humor. I pulled it out, catching Blake's eye instantly. "Is that your tribute?" He mocked, thrilled. "A coin? Man, don't pass out from jealousy." Blake held up his relic container. Orion accepts verified success charms, real estate deeds, and gold bullion. Your deity is getting pocket change. I glanced down into the barren pit. Then she and I have that in common. I was risking my soul shot at a real future. On a ruined altar, a scratched engraving, and a single line from a book. That was either clever plot setup, or just an author trying to sound profound. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Mira sidled up to me. "Dorian," she whispered, "if you make a sacrifice and she takes it, the cathedral will log the attempt." "I'm aware." I grabbed a clean prayer parchment from the side table. Next to it lay an ancient ritual dagger, secured inside a damaged glass box. I smashed the glass with the base of my palm. Since today had officially turned into a speed run of sacrilegious property damage. The knife was compact and made of silver. Mira gasped. "A blood sacrifice?" Blake's smirk faded. Such offerings were permitted, but no ordinary person actually performed them. Using blood meant skin in the game, and high stakes meant the sacrifice could bite back, if the deity gave it a hard pass. I poked my thumb. A sharp sting flared up instantly. A drop of blood started to pool. My writing was slow, since my hand wouldn't stop shaking. To Alia of the initial threshold, to the first step before the path to fortune. Before the gold, I dedicate the little I own. A hush fell over the shrine. I could still catch the ceiling's dripping water, Trent's heavy breathing, and the shuffling of feet over by the entrance. But all the mocking stopped. That was the exact moment real fear hit me. Dealing with ridicule was easy enough, but the quiet left room for failure. I set the silver piece onto the bloodstained parchment, creased the paper once, and dangled it over the parched pit for a moment. I saw myself exactly how the rest of them did. Just a battered, flat-broke, unbacked loser, handing a filthy coin to a statueless goddess. Then I let go, and the note drifted into the abyss. I waited, but absolutely nothing occurred. The pit remained dry. The plinth remained bare. The sanctuary offered me zero signs. No glowing light, no warmth. Not even a tiny glimmer. Trent let out his breath first, then cracked up so hard he slapped the doorframe. Oh man, she totally dissed the buck. The rest chimed in. Blake smirked as though he'd just witnessed my entire future get flushed right down the drain. Mira shifted her gaze, and somehow that cut deeper. I kept staring down the shaft. Come on, please. Blake took a step closer. Want to get help? He sneered. Maybe the baby goddess only listens if you bawl louder. I opened my mouth, but my retort completely vanished because under his voice, underneath the cackling, beneath the foul water leaking from above, I caught a sound, a faint metallic clink. The laughing died down. The silver had finally hit. But that made 0 sense. The shaft was only about 20 feet deep. Yet that coin had been dropping way too long. Everyone froze, watching. Then the noise echoed again. Clink, even deeper down. Like the coin hit solid rock. Ricocheted, and plunged further down. Mira murmured, no way that shaft is actually that deep. The ancient footprint emblem on the base flashed once. And a slender thread of dark, gilded light slithered through the dust across the floor. So incredibly faint, I figured I was just seeing things. Blake backed up a step. All the warmth drained right out of the room. The parched sacrificial pit exhaled a freezing draft straight into my face. And from some impossibly distant abyss below, a female voice drifted up through the gloom. Who dares summon the first step? My instinctive reply to that ancient voice was almost out. But thankfully no. Sheer panic paralyzed my tongue before pure stupidity could blurt itself out. The sanctuary had warped into something twisted, a wrongness rattling all the way down to my teeth. The dust swirling on the ground froze instantly, the icy chill rising from the sacrificial pit, entwined around my face, my throat, and my bleeding thumb. Behind me, the crowd hadn't gone anywhere, yet their chatter sounded completely muffled, as though someone had plunged the entire chamber underwater. Blake's lips parted, but absolutely no sound came out. Honestly, that was the most quiet he'd kept all day. I bent over the edge, desperately trying not to look like a guy who was a split second away from pissing himself in some sacred crypt. My name is Dorian West. I called out. I invoked Alia of the first step. The pitch-black void beneath the pit stirred. It shifted like some massive entity lazily cracking open a heavy eyelid. The woman's voice echoed back, faint and far off, but with a fierce, battered edge. Alia, she murmured, as though the syllables felt completely foreign. An insignificant name, a shattered name. Who passed it down to you? That inquiry nearly ended me. The question practically did me in, though not in a literal, physical sense, yet. If I came clean and just said, hey, I read all about you in a book before I kicked the bucket, I had a pretty strong hunch. The deity in this killer basement wouldn't take it too well. Gods usually aren't thrilled to find out. They're just background lore, so I crafted a careful lie. I pieced together old fragments. I replied, the archives name you the goddess of first steps. Yet, the engraving mentions the initial step preceding the path. They call Orion Drake the deity of luck, though all his pleas focus strictly on gold. Deals and gains which never really added up to me. A dim line of dark gold throbbed across the ground. The tone sharpened. You speak of luck ahead of wealth. My heart sank. She'd actually caught that part. I gave a nod, unsure if she could even see me. Wealth follows the breakthrough, comes after the doorway opens, and after someone manages to outlast the rest. Luck must pave the way before riches can follow. For one tense moment, the pit fell silent. Behind my back, Mira stood completely still by the ruined pews, one hand partly raised as if to pull me away, yet unable to break through. Whatever heavy force had enveloped the shrine. Blake's smirk completely vanished. Trent seemed to be weighing options, wondering if slugging an apparition counted as self-defense. The voice questioned, are you a cleric? No. A scholar? No, not that either. A deceiver. I gulped. On occasion. The chasm released a sound that might have been a chuckle, had it been buried for a millennium and unearthed. Full of rage. Well, at least you aren't dumb enough to deny it. A small favor, but I'd take it. A chill crept right up my arm. The gash on my thumb throbbed. A faint loop of dark golden glow twisted beneath my flesh, then faded away before fully forming into a proper crest. The voice remarked, your tribute is pathetic. Yeah, I replied, I'm well aware. A single coin, a lone drop of blood, a single plea, penned by a desperate applicant with trembling hands. Harsh feedback, but spot on. The heavy aura around the pit intensified. Yet that coin held your final conviction. The blood bore jeopardy. The words carried recollection. Minor things hold power when they are the very first. My breath caught. First, there was once more. This wasn't beginner's luck or training wheels. The origin, the precise instant before anything else unfolds. I longed to ask what her true nature was. I wanted to know why her effigy was missing, and why her temple lay decaying beneath the minster. Why her name felt like a ripped tag, stuck over something way bigger. But the air around my neck squeezed shut. Before I could speak, the goddess murmured, "Don't pry at locked doors with bleeding fingers. Dorian West. Some doors bite. Even cosmic mysteries come with warnings." Goo. I forced myself to stay on my knees. Then give me a way to get by, until I can unlock them the right way. Another lull. This one felt way heavier. "You asked for a blessing?" I asked for a shot. The reply slipped out before I could think. The well went completely dead silent, and then the voice breathed more softly. A fighting chance instead of gold. Triumph or safety? If I wanted safety, I'd be upstairs nicely begging Orion to ignore me. For the first time, a spark of heat flared. Amidst the chill, it was tiny, hardly there, but it grazed my chest, like a match lit inside a sealed room. "Orion," she whispered. The tone she used for his name made the hair on my arms stand straight up. It wasn't just hatred. It felt older and nastier, like a crowned agony. Then it dissolved. "I cannot grant what I lack," Elias said. "Believers no longer fuel my path. Prayers no longer carry my name. Tributes no longer fill my well. The world has forgotten the threshold. So the gateway is nearly gone." That wasn't the response I was looking for. I wanted her to say, "Congrats, Dorian. Here's your infinite cheat code. Please enjoy being loaded and gorgeous." Instead, I got a holy bankruptcy, totally on brand for my life. Yet, she carried on. "You remembered enough to call. You dared enough to be heard. So, I will grant you a single start." The dark golden streak on the floor raced toward me. It hit my chest without a shock. For a brief second, I saw nothing but thresholds. There were prospects, pathways, slight rifts in reality. A guy looking away at the worst moment. A playing card sliding from sleeve. A deadbolt swapped out way too recently. A cost nobody could comprehend. A route that only appeared if someone was desperate enough to take the first step. Then, the premonition abruptly vanished. I collapsed back onto one hand, panting. A faint crescent was seared right above my heart, underneath my skin. It was way too dim to be a proper faction mark, and too bizarre for the cathedral scanner to decipher. More like a pledge written in invisible ink. Elia's voice dropped to a low whisper, and the words immediately hit home. "A single lucky break, one bend in the road. It won't carry you if you just stand around, and it definitely won't reward cold feet. Risk something you can't stand to lose, and the path might just answer." Emphasis on might. "Immermerd, I'm forgotten." Not generous, but fair. Brutally fair. The icy grip let go of my throat, and that dark, golden glow dissolved from the dust. Sound suddenly flooded back into the chapel all at once. Someone swore. Someone lost their footing. Trent yelped like he'd been bitten by a dog. Blake grabbed hold of the doorframe, trying to act like he hadn't almost toppled backward. Mira got to me first, grabbing my shoulder, just before I slid sideways into the well, which really would have been an incredibly embarrassing way to go. Right after finally getting some divine attention. "What happened?" she demanded. I blinked up at her. "Good news," she countered. Myra's gaze flicked down to my chest, then to my thumb, and finally back to the well. "Did she accept you?" "I think she gave me a free trial." Blake composed himself enough to scoff. "A drafty hole and a basement echo." He sneered. "Is that what you folks consider a divine response these days?" I looked past Mira straight at him. "You flinched, Blake." His expression hardened. "Only because the floor cracked." "Did the floor hurt your feelings?" A few onlookers made the mistake of snickering. Blake's gaze turned icy, and the laughter died instantly. He still possessed wealth, status, and a golden dominion relic. All I had was a bleeding thumb, and a sketchy deal with a basement ghost. The social hierarchy hadn't shifted all that much yet. A vibration buzzed against my hip. It was my fractured phone. The screen had just come alive on its own. For one terrifying second, I assumed the cathedral had already flagged me for holy misbehavior. Knowing my luck, the subject line probably read, "Congrats. You've committed heresy." But it didn't come from the cathedral. It was just an old spam alert from some public auction app. Dorian downloaded it months ago and never wiped it, since his phone was honestly too broke to pass up even the worst deals. Southside Storage Estate auction tonight. Sole unclaimed unit of a deceased cathedral archivist. Bidding starts at $10. Though the message had been buried for weeks, it suddenly popped up on my screen, as if someone had dragged it straight out of the grave. By its neck, a dead cathedral archivist. My pulse instantly began to race. Mirror peeked over my shoulder and frowned. "You cannot seriously be plotting to hit a storage auction. After everything, I can't afford a shrink." I replied, so yeah, I am. Blake chuckled again, though his voice cracked a bit now. Brilliant. The nursery goddess sent him bargain hunting. Maybe she did, or maybe. Pure luck had opened the only route I could actually afford. I walked straight out of the chapel, before anyone could stop me, mainly because momentum was the only thing keeping me from realizing that my knees were violently shaking. By dusk, I was standing behind a chain-link fence at Southside Storage, packed in with discount chasers, estate looters, and guys who looked like they could sniff out mildew through concrete walls. My total net worth after paying bus fare came out to exactly $12.42. Honestly, I'd never felt more financially elite. The auctioneer cranked open the first few lockers. Battered furniture, broken tech, and crates of old clothes. People fought over them like wolves scrapping for trash. Then he unbolted Unit C-17, and the crowd collectively groaned. It looked pathetic, a slumped mattress, 3 split plastic bins, a broken lamp, and piles of soggy cardboard. The type of locker that practically made you want a tetanus shot, just for looking at it. The auctioneer opened the floor at $10. No one made a bid. I was ready to stay quiet, which would have been the smart play and, honestly, totally out of character for my day. But then I spotted the lock sitting in the locker. Brand new, way too fresh. The containers were covered in dust, but that lock was barely rusted. Someone had swapped it out pretty recently, yet they still walked away from the place. Tucked behind the mattress, a single carton bore a faded cathedral archive mark. My chest started burning, though it wasn't exactly painful. It felt more like a finger prodding me from the inside. Of course, first chance struck again. The path led straight into a storage unit that looked like a raccoon's final resting place. I threw my hand up. $12. The auctioneer just gaped at me. Kid, the starting bid is 10. Yeah, I know. I replied, trying to sound like I knew what I was doing. A couple of people chuckled, but nobody countered me. The auctioneer gave a shrug, going to the kid with $12 and terrible judgment. Fair point, to be honest. The second that unit belonged to me, the heat beneath my ribs completely evaporated. Just vanished. First chance had delivered, meaning even if I just bought a crate of mold and bad choices, my luck had run its course. I spent the following 20 minutes sorting through garbage, struggling to ignore the fact that I'd just risked practically everything I owned, based on the whims of some echo in a cavern. But then I hit the first protective card holder. Vintage baseball cards, preserved in flawless condition. Next came an autographed guitar pick encased in a display, followed by a roll of silver quarters. This stash wasn't going to make me rich, but it was plenty to insure my bank. Statement stopped looking like a total joke, and right behind the cathedral stamp crate, shrouded in heavy oilcloth, I discovered a leather notebook. Its binding was split, and the sheets reeked of grime and stale smoke. On the cover sat that identical emblem, an incomplete ring. My hands instantly turned to ice. Before I could even flip it open, a guy in a deep forest green suit stepped up to the entrance of a locker. He looked far too sharp and collected to be your usual auction regular, sporting gold cufflinks shaped like miniature scales. Classic Golden Dominion vibe. He fixed his eyes on the book. Look, I'm a collector of church archives, he uttered smoothly. $2,000 for that beat-up book. $2,000 for a musty old registry he'd only glanced at. For a mere 3 seconds. My empty wallet screamed, take it so loud I nearly got tinnitus. But for once, my brain actually did its job. No one drops $2,000 on complete garbage, unless that garbage could ruin them. I tucked the register tight under my arm. No can do, I replied. Sentimental reasons. The guy's smirk faded instantly. You haven't got a clue what's in your hands. Yeah, true, I nodded, retreating further back into the locker. But I'm catching on to what you're after. His gaze turned sharp for a split second. I honestly thought he'd lunge in and snatch it. Right then, another bidder yelled for the auctioneer nearby, and the guy's poker face slipped right back on. He tossed a business card onto a cracked plastic crate. If you change your mind. I held my breath until he completely disappeared from sight. Suddenly, the register began trembling in my grip. The brass buckle popped open all on its own. Leaves whirled past chronological entries, names, ancient temple tithes, and scorched postage marks, until a single sheet flattened right beneath my thumb. A bold title stood out in faded dark ink. Asset Registry, Principal Sanctuary of Alia. The document didn't merely flip open. It practically pointed fingers. The Cathedral Asset Log. Principal Sanctuary of Alia. The sheet didn't classify it as a defunct altar, insignificant, a minor household shrine, or some basic warehouse for local deities. It explicitly stated Principal Sanctuary with legal terminology, vintage handwriting, and an official metropolitan crest, imprinted so intensely down in the margin that it left a heavy indentation on the sheet. Standing in that locker, surrounded by the stench of soggy boxes and rotted vermin, it hit me out of nowhere that this decaying text in my hands was worth a hell of a lot more than $2,000. The agent from the Golden Dominion had already vanished down the corridors of storage units, which didn't exactly make me feel safe when a dapper guy wearing gold cufflinks drops a $2,000 offer on a decaying journal, then just strolls away without a fuss when you pass. He isn't throwing in the towel. He's just finding a smarter way to handle it. Slamming the ledger shut, I tucked it into my coat. The baseball cards and silver quarters, along with the autograph pick, went into my pack. Quick cash from those could keep me fed for a week. But that ledger felt exactly like the kind of thing that'd get me knifed in some dark alley. So, naturally, I headed straight back to the cathedral. During the whole bus ride, I kept one hand clamped firmly over my chest. Every time a passenger glanced my way, I pictured guys in gold cufflinks, hired muscle, church security, or worse, Blake Harrington, armed with enough wits to actually be dangerous. By the time I made it to the Central Divine Cathedral, nightfall had completely blanketed downtown. Orion, Drake's gilded monument, was still shining over the plaza. Because of course it was. Some deities get massive floodlights. Alia just gets basement mold. Applicants were still inside. The offering season never takes a break. Way too many 18-year-olds desperate to buy a future. Before the faction trials locked them down, I burst through the main entrance looking filthy, black and blue, concealing a highly suspicious ledger. Beneath my jacket, the elderly front clerk caught sight of me first. His dull, uninterested look instantly vanishing. As I dropped the leather-bound book onto his desk, he stared at the footprint and the broken circle emblem, then up at me, then right back down at the crest. "Where on earth did you get this?" he demanded. "An estate sale." His gaze sharpened. "This belongs in the Archivo archives." "Perfect," I replied. "Then you can look through it." He hesitated to touch it, which immediately gave me a bad feeling. People avoid cursed relics, messy lawsuits, and dining and dashing with that exact same expression. Eventually, he pulled the volume open. The second his fingertips grazed the parchment, the intake screen right beside him began to glitch. A slender ribbon of black and gold snaked across the monitor. The clerk froze completely. 2 warning messages popped up on the display. Inactive sanctuary key file identified. Applicant linked sanctuary home identified. Right then, the massive validation gateway behind him activated. Its indicator lights flickered on sequentially. White, blue, and then gold, the staffer muttered. "Ah, hell." Not exactly reassuring words from a temple staffer. A chime resonated throughout the second-floor registration area. A few applicants glanced over, then a lot more. Suddenly, every bit of the wrong spotlight shifted to me. The reader announced in a serene, robotic tone, "Applicant Dorian West. Please proceed into the validation gateway." I glanced at the staffer, who stared back like he was about to quit his job. "Can I opt out?" I inquired. The reader cut in before he could answer. "Declining will be logged as an attempt to mask divine status." How very accommodating. I stepped inside the gateway. The metallic frame vibrated around me. A dim beam scanned across my battered face. Worn coat, grimy fingers, and a logbook on the desk. The emblem over my heart grew warm beneath my ribs. The initial scan aired out. The second scan crashed even harder. The third scan made the structure hum. Like a pissed-off wasp, a crowd gathered quickly. And right on cue, courtesy of cosmic irony, Blake Harrington strode out from the Golden Dominion Hall. At that very second, a faint golden crest was shimmering near his wrist. A fresh sec brand. A tiny, hovering hologram drifted right beside him. Orion Drake, Golden Dominion Divinity. Tier 1. Surrounding applicants were applauding. Blake wore the smug look of a guy who had been touched by fate itself, and was already picking the perfect smirk for when the peasants bowed down to him. Then he spotted me inside the gateway. His grin turned malicious. "West," he shouted, "did that low-rent goddess finally pass you a badge for scraping by?" Trent surfaced behind him, chuckling. Some onlookers piped in, though not as loudly as before. A few of them had caught the token's descent. "It's all jokes until the floor starts glowing." The scanner's voice echoed through the room. "Unidentified divinity detected." The giggles died down. Blake froze in his tracks. The overhead lights turned from gold to deep black gold, so intense and chilling that everyone nearby backed away. The machine kept droning. Domain classification unstable. The clerk gulped. Mira Caldwell showed up at the edge of the crowd, no doubt reeled in by the alarm. Our eyes locked. She didn't look arrogant at all. She looked anxious, which was basically her trademark now. The scanner tried once more. Domain match found. The tension became palpable. Right then, the monitor above me flashed to life. Unidentified divinity detected. Domain, first path and fortune. Rank 3 divinity route. For one glorious moment, the entire registration hall collectively held its breath. Then all hell broke loose. Candidates started screaming. Some guy swore, and another claimed the machine was busted. Blake glared at the monitor, like it had personally insulted his family. Rank 3, Trent sputtered, his voice cracking. From a foot goddess? I like it noted that I kept a totally straight face, even if I was throwing a massive victory parade on the inside. Blake's rank 1 badge was floating right next to him. Suddenly, looking way less sacred and a whole lot more pathetic. I did my absolute best not to stare at it. I failed. Blake caught me, and his face turned crimson. No way, he muttered. That shrine is dead. Mira stepped closer, her eyes glued to the display. Dead gods don't manifest rank 3 resonance. Then the device is glitched. Blake barked. The scanner picked that exact second to make matters worse. A new line popped up right beneath my ranking. Secondary blessing channel locked. The text lingered for barely 2 seconds before the screen glitched out. A guy in a dark suit strode across the floor, his pace quick and deliberate. He wore a gold-trimmed cathedral insignia. Clerical staff, not a priest. The kind of bureaucrat who'd ruin your life with paperwork and sleep like a baby after. The onlookers made way for him as the old clerk stood at attention. So, this was Director Malcolm Reeve, the regional Golden Dominion official. A corporate cathedral smile paired with completely soulless eyes. He checked the scanner readout, glanced at me, and then shifted to the ledger. A subtle twitch crossed his features, a look of pure recognition, masked by underlying dread. It vanished quickly, but I caught it anyway. Reeve raised a hand, locking the telemetry. The arch light shut off instantly, and the main monitor went black. A wave of complaints erupted from the applicants. Just a validation error, Reeve announced smoothly. Inactive shrine resonance often skews scanner data. Nobody is permitted to share unverified diagnostics. Too late, several candidates had already filmed it on their phones. Good luck keeping a lid on that, Director. Reeve faced me. Dorian West? I wiped my clammy palms against my coat. According to all my overdue bills, yeah. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Reeve stared down at the volume. It seems you've recovered cathedral property. Actually, I bought abandoned locker contents at a government auction. Ecclesiastical archives cannot be privately owned. Well then, maybe your church shouldn't lose them in storage units. The elderly clerk let out a muffled gasp. Reeve's plastered smile never wavered. This ledger might prove a chapel once existed, he noted, but it doesn't mean the shrine is legally protected, secure, endowed, or transferable to an unregistered applicant. And there it was, the catch beneath the miracle. I had the proof that Elias Chapel existed, but existence didn't guarantee safety. Reeve spoke up, projecting his voice for the onlookers. The subterranean facility is derelict, structurally unstable, and dedicated to a deity lacking a current congregation. Per cathedral mandates on inactive sites, it is officially slated for decommissioning. A cold dread hit my chest. Decommissioning? I echoed. A polite euphemism, Reeve countered, for bulldozing, condemning, and erasing it from the registry. I watched Blake's smug confidence creep right back onto his face. Are they allowed to do that? I questioned the staffer. The guy froze, but Reeve cut in for him. Yep, unless some legitimate applicant puts up a restoration bond and takes full accountability, legally speaking, for the sanctuary. Cool, I replied. What's the damage? Reeve's gaze drifted down to my thrashed coat, my budget kicks, and that bag strap seriously biting into my shoulder. He already figured I didn't have that kind of cash, which was exactly his game. 900 grand, he declared, submitted within a week. Total silence took over the place again. 900K. Meanwhile, I'm rocking a pack filled with baseball cards, pre-1965 quarters, and a single guitar pick. So, basically there. Blake finally cracked a grin. Props to you, West. He smirked. Looks like your deity comes with a price tag. Grabbing the registry, I saw Reeve put out his palm. The historical documentation remains in our possession. Nope. The refusal slipped out before my brain could stop it. Reeve's expression turned icy, but I pressed on anyway. Honestly, today felt totally driven by awful life choices. This logbook serves as proof in an ongoing ownership conflict. You literally just stated I've got 7 days. If you intend to confiscate the sole evidence, confirming this holy site ever existed, go request a formal impound decree from the Iron Bench. I had absolutely no clue if that was even a real thing, but made Reeve hesitate. That slight delay proved I wasn't just pulling total garbage out of thin air. Reeve dropped his arm. 1 week. He warned. When time's up, the lower sanctuary gets locked down and cleared out completely. Try to mess with that, and your candidacy gets instantly put on ice, pending a formal spiritual malpractice investigation. Spinning on his heel, he exited the room. Blake edged closer while passing by my side. Time to start hoarding those pennies, man. I flashed him a grin. Watch it. At the rate I'm moving, I might just end up running circles around your bloodline by dinner. His mouth twitched. Was I being childish? No doubt. But as soon as the onlookers started trickling out, the actual panic hit me hard. Level 3. 7 days. 900,000 bucks. Plus a high-ranking Golden Dominion official, who kept staring at Alia's emblem, as if it had crept out from beneath his bed. I grabbed the ledger and headed back down to the lower chapel, before guards changed their minds. The hallway felt even colder than before. Alia's door swung open at my touch. It required no scanner and no rusty struggle. Unlatching easily from within, the dry well waited under the vacant pedestal. The ruined chapel seemed completely unchanged, but I finally realized a grim truth. This wasn't merely a forgotten room. It was a throat, Alia's final way to breathe into this world. I walked over to the well, clutching the ledger to my chest. I got your chapel approved, I said, but there's kind of bad news. It comes with a $900,000 punchline. The well remained dark. Then a faint wisp of chilly air drifted up. Alia's voice sounded even weaker now. If this well is sealed, she whispered, my voice dies with it. My grip tightened around the ledger. How much time do we have? The response brushed like frost against my bloody thumb. 7 days. The exact timeline Reeve gave me. Of course, because the cathedral and the goddess agreed on precisely one thing. My time was running out. Scrounging up $900,000 in a week really wrecks a guy's confidence. I sat on the broken floor of the side vestry, right next to Alia's main shrine. The ledger spread across my knees. A bag full of trashy auction finds sat nearby, giving me the financial clout of a raccoon, complete with a checking account, baseball cards, silver quarters, and an autographed guitar pick. So, only $897,000 short. Piece of cake. Through the open inner threshold, Alia's dry well breathed a chill against my ankles. Her faint voice drifted from the main room. Money is not the sole tribute. I glanced at the vacant pedestal. Please explain that to Director Reeve. He seemed incredibly pro-cash. The cathedral set its price in stone. Not for me, Elia muttered. That froze me. I looked back down at the book. The leaf following the property log wasn't a title deed. It was a list of names. It was filled with everyday folks instead of celebrities. Benefactors or aristocrats. Elias read aloud. Initial shop opened post-fire. Maribel Torres, firstborn, survived the winter. Jonah Pike, first steps taken post-injury. Ruth Bell, initial journey out west. Beneath every name was a tiny emblem, the identical footprint stamped. Inside an open circle, set beside old tokens so petty, they'd have made Blake Harrington burst out laughing, until he choked on his own tongue. 2 copper pennies, a button, a kid's shoe ribbon, a train pass, a wedding nail, small, seemingly pointless trinkets. Except the paper vibrated beneath my fingertips, as if those entries weren't just dead ink. Disciples? I asked. Memories, Elia replied. Some are mine, some almost were. The world just wiped them away. Her voice cracked on that final word. Right then, I finally grasped the real problem. Reeve demanded 900 grand, because cash is the language his crowd speaks. But Elia hadn't answered me because of my wealth. She'd answered because I recalled the right thing, with the wrong kind of currency. So maybe the next tribute didn't need to be grander. Maybe it just needed to mean more. I spent the next few hours doubled over the book, like a sleep-deprived grave robber doing homework. I transcribed every single legible name onto blank prayer slips from the vestry side drawer. When those slips ran out, I resorted to the back of church bulletins, old trial leaflets, and one glossy, Golden Dominion pamphlet I spotted by the stairs. Using that one felt good. For each name, I jotted down what the ledger still held. First shop, first child, first journey, first recovery, first oath. Elia stayed quiet while I worked. Occasionally, the well gave a faint throb, whenever a name was penned accurately. Other times, absolutely nothing happened, forcing me to peer closely at faded ink, until my eyes were burning near midnight. Mira caught up with me at the vestry entrance. She was holding 2 paper cups of cheap machine coffee, and looked like she'd spent the last 3 hours debating with herself whether to even get involved. You look like total hell, she said. Hey, I'm just cultivating an air of mystery. Dude, you've got dust in your hair and blood on your sleeve. Exactly. Advanced mystery. She stepped inside but stopped right before the inner doorway. Smart move. Her eyes scanned the copied names. the silver quarters, the bloodstained prayer slips, and the ledger. "What are you even doing?" she asked. "Just trying to save a goddess with some arts and crafts." Mira didn't laugh. I gave her the sanitized version. The ledger proved Alia actually had followers. The chapel desperately needed restoration. And while funding was the legal hurdle, getting her recognized might be the divine one. I kept quiet about First Chance, or Ian, or the fact that I was basically a dead guy, wearing Dorian West's trash credit score like a costume. Mira listened, then set one of the coffees down beside me. Reeve locked down the scanner logs. She said, "But people already recorded that rank 3 anomaly. Blake's spinning it, telling everyone it was a glitch. Basement interference, obviously. He also claims your deity just triggers mold allergies. To be fair, that part might actually be true." Mira crouched down near the paperwork. "If you turn those names into an official offering, the cathedral is going to notice." "Good. That wasn't a green light, you idiot." I looked up at her, and she let out a sigh. Dorian, Reeve didn't look confused back there. He looked like he recognized something. "If you make another bizarre offering, he'll move in fast." I wanted to tell her I had a game plan. Too bad my master plan was just a stack of dead people's names. $7 and change, and sheer optimism fueled by panic. "I know," I muttered. Myra's expression softened for a fleeting second. "Then don't go out alone." Before I could even reply, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway right above us. The heavy, measured strides sounded disciplined, way too synchronized to belong to any regular candidates. Myra's face went pale. I snatched up the original ledger. 3 guys wearing cathedral maintenance jackets suddenly appeared just past the ruined vestry door. They weren't carrying tools, and their boots were spotless. One guy had gold scale cufflinks under his sleeve. Right there, that was the better way to take the ledger. The man out front smirked. "Dorian West, Director Reeve, demands a return of cathedral archival property." Mira stepped up beside me. "Do you have a seizure warrant?" His smile remained polite. "Nope." Then he barged into the vestry anyway. So much for official paperwork. I grabbed the copied prayer slips, shoved them into the leather binding, and bolted toward the side aisle. Super heroic, super graceful. Also, I smashed my knee into a broken bench so hard. I saw 3 gods, and none of them were mine. The first guy lunged for the ledger. Mira grabbed a cracked candlestick and swung it right into his path. It struck the stone floor with a clang, loud enough to wake the dead. "Screw regulations, run," she snapped. I ran. A second guy snagged my jacket near the shoulder. Fabric ripped. I twisted, slipped halfway out of it, and shed the coat completely. For one terrifying second, his hand brushed the ledger. The leather cover clamped shut on his fingers. He shrieked, just enough to show me the book had teeth. For folks it didn't like. I liked it a lot more after that. I sprinted down the side hallway, clutching the ledger, and the bundle of prayers against my chest. Behind me, boots pounded against stone. Mira yelled something. A guy swore. The lower gate alarm started blaring. The old access slip in my pocket sparked black gold. The inner well room door popped open before I even reached it. I dove inside. The door slammed behind me, with a finality that made my spine tingle, and my lungs give up. The guys hit it from the other side once, twice. The ancient would shuddered, but held for now. I stumbled over to the offering well, and dumped everything out on the floor. Names, coins, prayer slips, the old ledger, and my very first vow, written on the back of Reeves. Decommissioning notice. Because, yeah, I am petty in highly useful ways. My hand were trembling so badly, I nearly dropped the ritual dagger. I sliced my thumb once more over the roll of silver quarters. Blood stained every single coin in crimson crescents. "I don't have $900,000, I informed the well. I've got no disciples, no priest, no effigy, and thanks to those goons, no clean coat either." The door rattled behind me. "But I do have names." The well turned ice cold. I tucked the prayer papers into the leather ledger, the duplicated names resting flat against the deed of property. The blood-smeared coins slid into the crease, like miniature moons. "I present proof that you are remembered," I declared, "and I make my initial oath as your devotee." The pounding outside suddenly ceased. That unnerved me even more than the racket. I held the book of remembrance over the well. For a brief moment, I paused, because if this bombed, I wasn't just flat broke. I'd be stuck in a cellar with pissed-off guys, a fading deity, and enough legal hot water to make my ghost hire an attorney. Then I let go. The binder plummeted into the arid blackness. At first, absolutely nothing, seeing as every holy phenomenon in my life apparently required a theatrical pause. Then the names started to murmur from the masonry, rather than the abyss. Elias Reed, Maribel Torres, Jonah Pike, Ruth Bell, one after another. The extinguished tapers ignited with dark gold light. The fractured footprint emblem on the base cracked wide open, and encircling it appeared a ring of dim engravings. The majority of them locked tight. A single sign gleamed first. A tumbling coin. Elias's voice boomed louder than before, heavy with agony. If a soul acolyte endures, she murmured, then I wasn't completely isolated. A second voice replied from somewhere above the shaft, vibrant, gruff, and full of laughter, as though someone had just burst into a pub. After spending a century locked out, about time, I was beginning to think. The entire assembly had gone bust. A coin impacted rock deep within my core. Clink, might surge through me. The energy was dark gold, unlike Orion's cozy glow. Incisive, restless, and seeking out vulnerabilities. A circular brand seared right next to Elias's crescent. Beneath my flesh, though it stayed bound to hers, it settled right within that same route, just like a tiny doorway opening up inside a massive one. The voice declared, Maverick Coinfall responds to the initial summons. The chapel floor fractured outward. The guys outside yelled from somewhere right above us. As the cathedral scanner began screeching, a public alarm went off, blaring down the bottom hallway. Multiple divine signatures detected. Another alarm kicked in, even louder. Suspected violation of the single deity rule. Oh, fantastic. I panted, gripping my chest tightly. The whole building thinks I'm stepping out on my goddess. Alilia's voice cut right through the agony. They aren't separate. The falling coin sigil has fused into the crescent mine. The scanner's alarm faltered for a second, before a brand new announcement boomed through the hallway. Speaker candidate Dorian West. Divinity classification updated. The doors flew open, revealing Mira standing outside, catching her breath, flanked by a pair of security guards, with half a dozen other candidates crowding behind her. Retreating footsteps thudded loudly up the stairwell. The repair crew had clearly bolted. The moment the sirens drew a crowd, Blake and Trent had shown up as well, because apparently, my public humiliation comes with a monthly subscription. Everyone stared blankly at the dark, golden radiance spilling directly from the chapel. The scanner made its final declaration. Divinity rank 4. The entire hallway fell completely silent. Blake's face turned the exact shade of curdled milk. I attempted to stand up, slipped once, but finally managed it by hauling myself up on the rim of the well. The coin embedded in my chest resonated softly, signaling a fresh beginning rather than a triumph. Suddenly, the cathedral's upper lobby erupted with shouts. Pure panic, not celebration. Massive doors were flung open at the top of the stairs. Private bodyguards rushed inside ahead of everyone, followed by paramedics clad in white coats, and then a stern-looking man wearing a pricey black suit. Right behind him walked a young woman, with icy eyes and a blood-stained sleeve. Positioned between them on a hovering gurney was an elderly man, whose face had turned a sickly ash-gray around his mouth. The wealthy elite had arrived, bringing grim mortality with them. Someone bellowed, "Clear the way for the Ashford family." That coin in my chest started ringing again, way louder this time, as my knees began to shake. With my fresh rank 4 mark still searing, I just knew the next gig had just rolled and bleeding. The ultra-rich don't run, unless death outpaces their bank accounts. That was my immediate thought, as the Ashford clan tore through the cathedral, acting like they owned the marble, the guards, and probably the damn air itself. I was still clutching the rim of Ollie as well, torso burning from that brand new rank 4 mark, when their security detail shoved candidates aside. Medics in white coats trailed right behind them, guiding a floating gurney through the lower hallway. Laid out on it was Henry Ashford. Even I knew that guy. Old money, private train networks, medical centers, and shipping monopolies. The kind of elite whose portrait probably looked down on poor folks. From 3 different corporate boardrooms. Right now, he looked like a stiff that had been forced into breathing for just 5 more minutes. His skin had turned completely ash-gray around the lips, with black veins creeping up his throat. Every few moments his chest would convulse, as if something inside was snapping another thread. That stern-looking guy in the suit was Graham Ashford, Henry's son, keeping pace right beside the gurney, with a tight grip locked onto the side rail. "Where's Monroe?" Graham barked. The young lady with blood stains on her sleeve had to be Sienna Ashford, the granddaughter. Intense gaze, poised expression, and a terrifying vibe. She looked younger than Graham, yet somehow far more likely to order a hit on you. And fix your punctuation at the exact same time. Reeve showed up at the top of the stairwell, his demeanor poised but clearly strained, because nothing messes up a cover-up, quite like a billionaire family, hauling a dying patriarch into the very facility where your basement heresy alarm is still blaring. "Mr. Ashford," Reeve said, "the cathedral is currently dealing with a security breach." Graham snapped back at him, My father is dying. Handle that first. Hard to argue with logic like that. A man in a lab coat stepped through the splitting crowd. His slick silver hair brushed straight back, with palms already radiating a soft white glow. That's Dr. Elias Monroe, a rank 4. Healer from the White Choir. The surrounding candidates flipped out, like some A-list celeb just walked in. Even the guys who'd literally just seen me hit rank 4 gazed at him with a completely different level of awe. My own rank 4 was brand new, looked totally sketchy, and had a faint hint of basement dust. Elias Monroe, though, was the real deal, certified and famous. Stepping up to Henry's stretcher, he pressed 2 fingers right against the old guy's neck. His expression darkened. How long has he been in this state? Elias demanded. Graham chimed in. Getting worse for 9 days, critical for the past 2 hours. Sienna added. 3 previous healing attempts completely bombed. A single Golden Dominion stabilizer managed to check the decline, but then it blew apart. That last part made the token inside my chest vibrate so intensely that I practically flinched out loud. Maverin's mark wasn't big on explanations. It didn't just hand me a flashing neon sign reading, obvious plot device ahead. It merely struck that phantom coin behind my ribs and counted on me to use my damn brain. Elias raised his hands. Everyone give him some space. The crowd backed off. I stayed put, mostly because my legs were still acting like wet noodles. Mira grabbed my arm, snapping, Doria, move it. I'm moving in spirit, I said, but she hauled me back anyway. A brilliant white luminescence erupted from Elias. It felt alive, far from mere candlelight or the harsh beam of a scanner. It surged from his palms straight into Henry's torso, shrouding the old man in shimmering, transparent wings made of therapeutic glyphs. For a brief second, the onlookers held their breath. It actually worked. Henry's breathing smoothed out, and those dark, discolored veins receded from his throat. Graham's expression lit up with a surge of hope, so intense it was almost painful to witness. But then, something metallic fractured deep within Henry's chest, causing the white glow to warp violently. Il a ester d'impure choc. No way. The therapeutic glyphs ripped apart like scrap paper in a gale. A sudden blast of white fire sent Elias flying backward. He crashed onto the floor, sliding hard right across the smooth stone, and leaving a trace of blood at the edge of his lip. Henry began to shake violently as the black veins flared up even darker. As the onlookers shrieked, Graham charged toward the gurney. Father Sienna grabbed his arm. Hands off. The magical backlash is still live. Her voice stayed level, but her hand were trembling. Right then, it hit me. I perceived it through that annoying, ugly itch behind my eyes. Encountering Henry Ashford, there should have been pathways. Slight openings, potential choices. A gasp of air that might bring another. Some therapy to buy a little time, or a blunder that somehow turned into luck. Instead, all I saw were severed threads. Countless dim, dark golden filaments had been chopped all around him, capped off with slender rings of gleaming gold. Those were blocked exits, not standard wounds, healing, or sickness trails. Henry's physical form was like a burning house, where every single exit had been boarded up. Words spilled from my mouth, before my self-preservation could shut me up. You can't cure someone whose future has been ripped away. Everyone in the hallway whipped around to face me. Super discreet, Dorian. A perfect 10 out of 10 performance. Elias hauled himself up, looking insulted despite bleeding out. Who blab? I weakly raised a hand. The cellar cultist, Blake mumbled, completely unfazed. Reeves' glare sharpened. Get him out of here. Graham locked eyes with me. He gave me the exact look wealthy elites give when weighing whether to purchase an item or just crush it. Clock's ticking. 10 seconds. He commanded. Sienna glanced down at the dark gold sigils, glowing softly beneath my shredded shirt. Give him a hearing, Reeve interjected. Miss Ashford, this prospect is currently being investigated for deity-level friction. Be that as it may, Sienna countered icily. The guy is on his feet, while your certified medic is pooling blood on the tile. I edged a bit closer, dismissing Reeves' death stare and Elias's fury. That celebration had flooded the corporate news network and saturated Dorian's own recollections. Mostly because the ultra-rich love hyping up deals like they're spectacles. A month and a half ago, I announced Ashford Holdings locked in a Golden Dominion Prosperity corporate overhaul deal. The official gala, the Orion Seal. Super flashy, incredibly pricey. Graham's expression shifted. I pressed on before he could cut me off. Right after that, your cargo expansion flopped. Your medical supply deal completely tanked. While the Varen Group secured deals, they had zero realistic chance of landing. Then Henry Ashford's health began to fail. Sienna's eyes narrowed. All of that is public record. Perfect. So I haven't lost my mind. I'm just being a pain. The token in my chest resonated once more, and I noticed a single golden band flare brighter than the rest. The sickness isn't the real issue, I declared, blocking his chance to counter. The healing magic keeps failing, because it's attempting to mend a body that has no future left to live. Elias glared at me as if I'd spit right on his diploma. That's total garbage, he snapped. Destiny, trauma, and opportunity severance are purely academic concepts. The old guy on the gurney seems pretty hell-bent on proving your theory wrong. Mira scoffed. Dorian's right. Diplomatic ambitions on hold, then. Graham closed the distance, prompting his security detail to step up with him. Can you back that up? Nope, I replied. Not from standing here. His expression darkened, but I quickly added, gesturing down toward the lower sanctuary. I can probably uncover the binding pact, if he's brought to Elias well, too. Reeve reacted instantly. Absolutely out of the question. That pushback alone made Graham hesitate. Sienna caught it, too. She glanced at Reeve, then back at the hallway behind me, and finally down at Henry. What's it going to take? An open, binding agreement, I stated. If I strike out, you lose absolutely nothing. Save for a few fleeting minutes he might not even have. If I pull it off, you cover Elia's restoration fine, safeguard her sanctuary from being bulldozed, and publicly credit her miracle with saving Henry. Ashford. Reeve's face went completely pale with rage. This is straight-up blackmail. No. Sienna countered. This is just bargaining during a medical crisis. Our legal teams just wrap it up nicer. She pulled out a sleek, silver contract pad. Her fingers flew across it. Graham saw Henry's chest shudder once more. Just do it, he finally barked. The device cast a pale, blue holographic agreement. Sienna tacked on terms faster than I could read him, covering the restoration bond payment, public testimony, and medical authorization, exemption from immediate confiscation by the cathedral, contingent upon noticeable recovery, and validation by the Ashford onlookers. She thrust the electronic pad toward me. Keep him alive, she demanded, or this serves as your signed confession to fraud. Fantastic, I muttered. Exactly the kind of pep talk I needed right now. I slammed my blood-stained thumb onto the document. The second my blood smeared the glass, the coin marched with such force. Then my eyes swam. The deal had unlocked something. The gurney was lowered down into Elias Chapel, hemmed in by the Ashford sentries, Cathedral Watch recruits, one livid director, and a bleeding medic, Mira Blake Trent, plus plenty of bystanders to ensure this was a miracle, or my own public execution. The Elias well sat in the center, feeble, parched, and listening. I rested the digital slate right on the ledge, and clamped a hand over my heart. Alia, I invoked. I require the honesty bound to this oath. The locked will embedded under my skin shifted. The descending coin mark glowed brightly, and then a subsequent sealed sigil ruptured. The emblem formed a ring of woven lines. An echoing voice boomed from the depths, predating common law and colder than any explicit warning. Initial oath acknowledged. The screen turned pitch black. Sienna recoiled. What the hell was that? Man, I was really hoping you guys could tell me. The voice droned on, concealed condition identified. The glowing blue text, shattered entirely, exposing a hidden record. Right underneath, a glowing golden crest blazed at the base. Orion Drake's personal mark was stamped inside, not directly on Henry, but tethered to an older Golden Dominion pact bound to his identity. A glowing line stretched from that mark to Henry's chest, before pulling away into the distance, heading for a void the monitor couldn't even detect. Elias muttered under his breath, "That ain't sickness." The unfamiliar voice spoke up once more. Upcoming vacancies relocated. Emergency berths reallocated elsewhere. Agreement verification outstanding. Jurisdiction masked. Graham looked, as though someone had literally knocked the wind out of him. Sienna's composure finally gave way. Who got them? The legal hologram started flickering, while the gilded emblem held its ground. Alia's voice echoed up from the reservoir, sounding breathless. Just one route. I can clear a single route, but that's it. A freezing sensation gripped my cult insignia. I knew what this would cost before she even spelled it out. If this went sideways, my crest would shatter. Tier 4, Alia Mavrin. Every bit of it could just evaporate. Straight back to Tier 0. Total obscurity. Or maybe worse. He glanced over at Henry, then at Reeve, who was glaring at the uncovered crest, like a guy watching his locked cellar burn down. Decision made. I slammed both palms onto the reservoir. I serve Alia of the introductory tier. I declared, loud enough for every single onlooker to hear. I offer this initial overt pledge, this unprotected pact, and the clean slate pilfered from Henry Ashford. Clear the passage he was blocked from taking. The fountain burst open. Beams of dark gold erupted upward, circling the gurney. Henry's spine flexed. The golden restraints binding him ruptured one by one, each snap echoing like a coin dropping into an abyss. The vacant plinth behind the reservoir split open as an image materialized above it. The form was merely a featureless, fractured female outline, looming where absolute nothingness had been before. The golden crest shrieked, and then Henry Ashford gasped. It was a genuine breath, not just a faint twitch. His eyelids fluttered open. Graham Ashford fell to his knees beside the cot, letting out a sound that was practically a whimper. Then he faced the parched reservoir and declared, "The ledger is settled. The Ashford clan acknowledges this act of God. The Elias Sanctuary is officially under our wing." Sienna clamped a hand over her mouth, yet her gaze stayed glued to the well. Elias Monroe glared right at me, like I just butchered his whole career, then dragged his patient back from the dead. As proof, above the hallway, the cathedral scanner went absolutely haywire. Divinity status recalculating. Reeve barked, "Kill the power." Way too late. The main monitor flashed so fiercely. The entire sanctuary was bathed in dark gold. Divinity status updated. Rank 5. Current mortal limit. Rank 5. The onlookers fell completely silent. But then, the system kept running. Alert. Primordial authority detected. First seal ruptured. Rank 6 threshold identified. The shadow hovering over the well raised its head. For a mere fraction of a second, a new designation flared across the monitor. Mother of Genesis. Right then, every single bulb in the sanctuary blew out. Total blackout. It was as if the cathedral itself caught sight of those words. Saw rank 6, and just straight up fainted. For a brief moment, there was nothing. The monitor died, the candles flickered out, and Orion's arrogant marble sheen from the upper floor vanished. Only pitch blackness remained, along with shattered glass raining onto the stone floor. While nearly 50 onlookers collectively forgot how to breathe softly, then the backup lighting strips buzzed to life, flooding the lower level in a crimson glare. Henry Ashford was hacking up a lung on the cot, clearly well enough to seem ticked off about it. Graham Ashford gripped his old man's shoulder tight, acting like his father might just pop out of existence if he unclasped his hand. Sienna shielded the cot from the onlookers, holding her agreement tablet high, her eyes intense, with fresh blood still staining her sleeve. I crouched on one knee next to Aaliyah as well, hands trembling, my ribs feeling like a furnace, as though someone had sliced through my chest and poured in molten, dark gold fire. Rank 5, the absolute pinnacle for modern humanity, supposedly. And I hit it by pulling off medical heresy. In a trashed cellar. Just another totally normal night. Nobody in the audience cheered at first. They just stared, which was way worse. Applause means they get what happened. And approve, but staring means their brains are still processing whether they just saw a miracle, a crime, or some public safety hazard. Then, the whispers started. Did it say rank 5? A rank 6 pathway? Holy crap. A one-god conflict? The golden seal. I saw the golden seal. Reeve's voice sliced right through the chaos. Nobody leaves this basement level. That instantly snapped everyone's focus back to him. Malcolm Reeves stood under the emergency lighting, dust coating his suit, with murder lurking right behind his professional smile. His gaze darted from Henry Ashford to me, and then to the fractured scanner display above the chapel doors. Cathedral security, Reeves barked, confiscate all unauthorized footage. This was an unstable, dormant site anomaly, and it might count as divine contamination. I nearly laughed. Divine contamination? So that's what they're calling it nowadays. Rescue a dying billionaire from a hidden golden dominion. Seal. And suddenly you aren't a miracle worker anymore. You're just basement mole with legs. A guard took a step toward an applicant, who was holding up his phone. Sienna Ashford's voice stopped him dead in his tracks. Touch a single witness recording, she warned, and Ashford legal files obstruction charges. Before dawn, the guard froze. Reeve pivoted toward her. Miss Ashford, this situation involves an uncertified divine manifestation and a suspected breach of the one God mandate. Sienna didn't even flinch. This situation involves a public contract, a failed certified healer, a concealed seal on my grandfather's covenant, and a miracle fully recognized by the Ashford family. Graham's raspy voice came from beside the gurney. The sanctuary is under our protection, and so is the candidate. Candidate. That title sounded completely absurd now. 5 minutes ago, I used to be a Tier 4 basement freak in a shredded shirt. Now, the system was logging me as Tier 5. Yet, honestly, if someone just offered me a sandwich right now, I'd probably burst into tears. Elias Monroe slumped against the wall, clutching a hand over his bleeding mouth. His pale choir sigils were pulsing, faintly around his fingers, as he kept his eyes locked on Henry Ashford. He glanced over at me once, and all traces of mockery had vanished from his expression, replaced by pure professional dread. A medic despises nothing more than cold proof that the physical body was never the true battleground. Mira knelt down beside me, gripping my arm tightly. Can you stand? Mentally or physically, Dorian? Not a chance. She hauled me up anyway, and my knees nearly gave out. The coin crest resonated with a soft hum, while the packed crest, orange brand, felt icy right beside it, resembling a band forged from strict law and terrible choices. Beneath both marks, Aaliyah's crescent glowed with a steady heat. 3 distinct channels, 1 shared path. The scanner had detected multiple divine traces, and completely lost its mind. Fair enough, though. Seriously, if I were some bureaucratic computer, and some battered, bleeding moron suddenly started channeling 2 extra deities, by way of a forgotten goddess, I'd be throwing a fit too. Reeves took a step toward me. Dorian West, until a full review of this incident is completed, you are to remain strictly in cathedral custody. Sienna immediately cut him off. She bypassed all the shouting and theatrical posturing. Instead, she raised the contract tablet, tilting it directly toward his face. Our pact ensures immediate Ashford's sanctuary for the sanctuary itself, the recovered patient, and the acting divine operative, pending final confirmation. Acting divine operative, I mumbled. Man, that sounds pricey. Can I send myself a bill? Mira gave my arm a sharp pinch. Sienna pressed on. If you honestly think this pact is void, feel free to contest it at the iron bench. But if you lock him up without due process, you'll be the one explaining why you interfered with the only individual capable of reversing my grandfather's critical degradation. Reeves's jaw clenched tight, and for one glorious second, the guy who valued Alia's life at a mere $900K, seemed like he'd just swallow the check. Then, he completely smoothed out his expression. He muttered, "Provisional medical and legal protection is recognized." Provisional, that word cut deep like a blade. Set down deliberately on a table. Reeves stared at me. "Enjoy your miracle. Mr. West, come morning, the whole country's gonna wonder what you actually did." He spun around and left. There was no dramatic exit or cartoon villain laugh. Just a calculated retreat. Honestly, that creeped me out more. People who shout are just trying to command a room. Guys like Reeve, they leave the room to track down a bigger weapon. The Ashford security shielded Henry, along with Alia and myself, pushing back the crowd. But the damage had already been done. Phones caught everything before Reeve could shut it down. The rank 5 alert, the malfunction. The first seal, the rank 6 progression, and that title that flashed for a split second. Mother of Beginning. I caught it. Mira caught it. Sienna caught it. And Reeve definitely saw it, too. He looked like someone who'd open a casket, only to find his own boss inside. Henry Ashford stirred on his gurney. His eyes cracked open, hazy but conscious. He glanced toward the fountain, then over to me, raspy and strained. There was a door. Everyone nearby went dead silent. Graham leaned in close. "Father." Henry's fingers twitched against the sheet. Gold on it, couldn't unlock it. Couldn't breathe. Then his eyes drifted shut again. The paramedics rushed in. But this time, the monitor lights stayed green. Faint, but definitely green. A genuine breath. A steady heartbeat. He was alive. Seeing that should have felt like a total win. Instead, I felt the whole room start to spin. Alia's voice echoed in the back of my mind. Whispery, but clearer than before. "You unlocked what was forbidden." I gulped, and shattered something doing it. The first seal, right? Great. Love a good, ominous title. Her vibe wasn't like a fading coal anymore, but more like a fire behind cracked glass. "Not broken," she murmured. "Just fractured. Big difference, yeah?" Reassuring? Not in the slightest. Before she could reply, the world above us started spinning. It kicked off with the phones. Some applicant near the stairs stared down and said, "It's already leaked," someone else swore. Within minutes, the church turned into a rumor mill. Under the emergency lights, brief videos went viral faster than guards could threaten anyone. One clip showed Henry waking up. Another had Reeve shouting to cut the scanner power. And one capture my rank 5 rank out. The titles were instant and totally brainless. Basement Deity hits Tier 5. Orion Pact Hex Unmasked. Pagan Heretic rescues Ashford Elder. That last one bugged me because it was so catchy. By the time Ashford guards moved me to an outer room. Off the lower sanctuary, the Golden Dominions. Initial press release was already out. Sienna recited it straight from her pad. Her tone deadpan. The Golden Dominion. Voices deep concern over an illicit, dormant altar event at Central Divine Cathedral. Preliminary data points to holy pollution. faulty scanner metrics, and a likely breach of the monotheistic treaty. We urge the public not to draw conclusions from doctored, piecemeal recordings. I sat on a stone seat, huddled inside a thick blanket, and stared blankly at her. Wow, I muttered, branded as Dr. Clips. Before I even get some food, Mira stood near the exit, arms folded. They're framing this miracle as a crime. Before people can accept it was real. Can they pull that off? Sienna eyed me. Yes. She didn't even blink, which was just about as reassuring as it sounds. She knelt down to meet my eyes directly. Get this straight. Rank 5 doesn't keep you safe. It makes you a prize, a threat, and a massive legal headache. I was holding out for wealthy and gorgeous. You're missing a church, a discipline guard, a legal team, domestic political faction, a vault for relics, senior apostles, and a PR department. Instead, you've got one condemned sanctuary, a single recovering deity, 2 bizarre secondary channels, and a massive PR disaster. Glancing at Mira, I realized her pep talk sounded like a tax audit. Mira sighed. She's not wrong. That was the worst part. Sienna stood up. My folks will cover the restoration bond and secure the lower chapel. Under the agreement, that buys some time, but it won't stop the Golden Dominion from disputing Eliah's legitimacy or spinning your power as pure corruption. What about Reeve? He cleared out of the cathedral 10 minutes ago. Sienna replied. I sat up straight. He bounced, handing over authority to the higher-ups. According to the cathedral staff's translation, the local snake had slithered off to call in the bigger snakes. A wave of icy dread washed through my chest. Eliah's presence had gone quiet during the legal storm, but now the markings beneath my skin began to shift. The coin, the ring of contracts, Eliah's crescent, and around them, other sealed glyphs I'd barely noticed before, started spinning like tumbler locks, searching for their keys. One symbol burned hot right under my ribs. A door. The door was waking up, even if it wasn't anywhere near wide open yet. I gripped the edge of the bench. Mira clocked it instantly. Dorian? The side chamber blurred for a single breath. I caught a glimpse of an ancient place I'd never been to, a train platform beneath a rusted roof. Tracks overgrown with weeds, names carved deeply into the wood, and a dark well yawning beneath the floorboards. A road that started right where people left everything behind. Then the vision abruptly snapped away. I was right back in the side chamber, breathing heavily. Sienna's hand had already flown to a hidden weapon at her waist. Always practical. What did you see? She demanded. A station. I replied. An old railway, maybe abandoned. And there was another well. Eliah's voice echoed through the marks, sounding tense and terrified in a way I'd never heard before. The cracking of the first seal was distinct. Who heard it? A moment passed before the reply came. The ones who laid me to rest. We moved on from basic, bureaucratic homicide to whoever puts a goddess in the ground. Murder. Lovely. The mark on the door flared up once more, tugging actively now rather than just showing the way. Alia breathed. The second seal has been stirred. Myra's face lost all color. The second. Sienna's gaze sharpened. A seal for what? I stayed silent, mostly because I had no clue. Right then, the hallway outside the room fell completely dead. The outer corridor quieted down, resembling the sudden hush among soldiers. When a truly lethal presence walks into the building, the Ashford sentries braced themselves. From the other side of the entrance came the steady rhythm of dress, shoes tapping on stone. Deliberate, poised, and utterly unbothered. Eliah's voice faded to a bare whisper. The second seal is summoning. Dorian West. The footsteps halted right outside our door. And so, she breathed, is the gold. The door swung open as though it had just been, awaiting clearance from someone with real money. There wasn't a knock or a heads up, just a single fluid click. Instantly, every single Ashford guard in the anteroom brought up their weapons in perfect unison. A man loitered in the doorway wearing a charcoal overcoat, a golden pin fastened at his neck, carrying the serene look of a person who's never had to hurry a day in his life, simply because the world always gets out of his way first. He looked anywhere between 35 and 50. Rank 5 folks always possess that irritatingly impeccable veneer, making age seem like a constraint meant only for the poor. His hair was pitch black, save for a lone touch of silver by the temple. He wore dark leather gloves, and his eyes were a pale gold, naturally so, which was far more unsettling than an eerie glow. Aaliyah's mark turned ice-cold deep in my chest. Maverin's coin abruptly fell silent. Oren's contract ring constricted around my finger like a noose. The man just smiled at the array of guns aimed his way. Please, put those down before someone makes a fool of themselves. Sienna didn't lower her weapon for a second. State your name. Lucian Harrow, he announced. The vibe completely shifted. The transition happened without thunder or dramatic gusts. Every grown-up with cash, legal expertise, or raw survival instincts instantly caught on that things had turned icy. Even I recognized that name from the books. Lucian Harrow, the veteran, rank 5 apostle of the Golden Dominion, one of Orion Drake's top living disciples. The kind of guy who didn't rock up for accidents. He showed up when the accident actually survived. I tried to stand a bit straighter, but my knees immediately started protesting. Lucian's gaze locked right onto me. Dorian West, you look even worse than in the footage. Awesome, I replied. I was worried the lens magnified the damage. Mira let out a tiny gasp beside me, like she wanted to kick my shin, but feared I might just collapse. Lucian strode into the room. The Ashford security shifted, yet not a single one blocked his path. That told me everything I needed to know. Rank 5 didn't just mean parity. It meant raw capability. Lucian had firepower plus wealth, relics, leverage, elite training, and plenty of nerve to treat someone's personal guards like background props. Sienna's tone remained tense. Dorian West is under Ashford's care. Lucian nodded, probably medically and by contract, but not spiritually. He raised a single gloved hand, and a sleek golden emblem materialized in midair, resembling a decree woven from pure light. I'm not here to execute your miracle worker, Miss Ashford. I'm here to stop a sacred blight from turning into a cult. There it was. He wasn't targeting my body. He was destroying everyone's right to believe in me. The sigil beamed a formal decree into the space. Urgent request for divine authenticity assessment. Subject, Dorian West. Purported guardian, Alia of the First Step. Charges, illicit worship of a dormant entity, breach of the one true God compact, and deceitful divine escalation. Tainted alternate pathways. Illegal sanctuary rebuilding. My eyes locked onto the phrase, fake divinity spike. Man, that sounds like cheating on an exam, I joked, just with extra incense. Lucian offered a polite grin. Cracking jokes is typical for terrified applicants. Sweet. I was worried I was actually special. Brushing that off, he shifted his gaze toward Sienna. The iron bench has taken over emergency authority. The wall right behind him began to dim. A slate-gray emblem materialized across it, a balance scale framed by a square HK. It possessed no face, no human traits, only the raw essence of justice, weighing down on the room like a heavy hand. An emotionless voice echoed from the emblem. Urgent plia reconnaissed. Holy authority trial is now active. My stomach did a flip. Sienna muttered a curse, which was, honestly, the most relatable vibe she'd shown yet. Lucian pressed on. Until this trial wraps up, Alia's shrine stays under temporary lockdown. Dorian West will remain monitored. Any move to take sealed clues out of this church will count as meddling. I glanced at Sienna. Can he seriously pull that off? Her mouth tightened. With iron bench backing? Totally. We'd gone from some basement sacrilege to a cosmic trial in less than an hour. Moving at this rate by breakfast time, I'd probably be throwing down with the moon. Wild. The slate crest flared with light. Expected punishments if found guilty. Sanctuary destruction, faction. Marked severance, stripping of divine safety rights, and branded as a celestial outlaw. My throat went completely dry. Marked severance? I felt Alia's crescent emblem throb beneath my skin. It wasn't quite panic, just an ache. A deep, old ache. Catching my look, Lucian dialed back his tone, which somehow made him feel way creepier. You've escalated things way too fast. Mr. West, just way too fast. A forgotten nursery deity wakes up after decades of absolute quiet. A broke nobody suddenly rockets to level 5. Several different prints show up on a single mark, and a hidden designation blinks on a glitchy scanner. Come on. Surely you get why the law has to ask questions. I get why you want those questions asked, before anyone starts asking why. Henry Ashford had a Golden Dominion seal in his chest. The room grew tense. Sienna's eyes darted to me. Lucian's smirk didn't even waver. A tragic misreading of contract residue. He stated smoothly. Your lack of experience blew it up into an accusation. Graham Ashford's voice rang out from the doorway, harsh and threatening. He'd left Henry with the medics, and now seemed like a guy barely holding it together. Through pure fury and high-end tailoring, my father was near death. Lucian gave a slight nod, and I'm glad to hear he's pulling through. The Golden Dominion wishes him a full recovery. Cut the crap. Lucian looked almost entertained. As you wish. Then he faced me again and snapped his fingers. A second document unfurled in midair. Ancient parchment, gilded border. Dark ink, with a seal stamped at the bottom, bearing a footprint emblem. A circle slashed through by a golden line. Alia's mark throbbed. Agony spiked through my ribs so violently, I nearly doubled over. Mira grabbed my elbow. Dorian, Aaliyah's voice echoed in my mind. Shattered and frantic. No. Just a single word. It was a flat refusal. Not an explanation. Lucian tracked my reaction closely. This is the surviving capitulation record of Aaliyah. The first step, by her own documented agreement, she passed sovereign control over to Orion Drake's stewardship after her faction fell apart. A hush fell over the room once more. Sienna moved closer. You're stating that Aaliyah surrendered her power? I'm stating nothing, Lucian replied. The document states it. The iron crest vibrated. Document received as preliminary evidence. My chest seared, the door mark clawed beneath my ribs. Like a trapped thing trying to break out. Aaliyah's presence wavered in and out, manifesting as raw pain rather than words. I forced my eyes onto the scroll itself, rather than the man displaying it. If I looked at Lucian, I'd only see smug certainty. So I focused on the record. Maybe I'd spot the deception. The script seemed ancient. The stamp looked even older, but the phrasing was way too clean. Too contemporary. The expression, minor developmental divinity, showed up on the third line. That was straight-up registry jargon. The exact same insulting label. The application pulled up when Trent made fun of her. Plus, the footprint stamp didn't sit underneath the gold line. It was pressed right over it, like someone had added a fake icon. Long after the gold had already marked the parchment, I thought back to the chapel ledger. Aged ink, messy real-time accounts, human hands, terrible spelling, and modest tributes. This document felt like history. After some attorney scrubbed it, dolled it up, and trained it to lie with a straight face. I pointed directly at the mark. That stamp is fake. Lucian cocked his head. Oh, is it? The footprint was pressed on after the gold slash. Genuine ledger marks don't overlap that way. And minor developmental divinities is modern bureaucratic classification terminology. You seriously expect me to believe an ancient treaty? Use the exact phrase from a cathedral mobile app. Myra's eyes went wide. Sienna reacted in a flash. Iron Bench logged the protest. The metallic voice replied, protest. Logged. Evidence. Dispute requires a certified counterrecord. A certified counterrecord? The court couldn't care less that I detected the fraud, sensed the fraud, or had a suffering goddess writhing deep inside my chest. None of that mattered legally. Lucian's smirk softened into something almost pleasant. A hunch isn't proof, Mr. West. Your status doesn't turn your personal opinion into historical fact. I loathe him just a bit for being completely right. Then he took a step forward. Explain to the bench how you host these links. My stomach completely dropped. What? Lucian's pale golden gaze followed the scanner, remnants lingering on my sigil, then lingered on the semi-conscious glyphs underneath it. The coin, the binding ring, the portal waking beneath your sigil. Are they autonomous deities, plundered remnants, or links of possession? Or did you forge an illegal root covenant? Under a fake name? A broken shrine root covenant. The word struck my mark like a hammer hitting a bell. Alia went completely dead silent. Lucian caught it, and so did Sienna. So did I. I had no clue what a root covenant even was. But Lucian did, and that was a massive problem. One as big as a cathedral. I serve one patron. I said, picking my words carefully. Alia of the first step. Whatever else replies, it replies through her. Lucian's gaze sharpened. Convenient. Precise. Unverified. The iron emblem thrummed once more. The respondent must offer proof of legitimate divine succession, or submit to an official mark examination. Mira muttered under her breath. What's a mark examination? Sienna's expression darkened. They cut straight into the faction mark with legal backing. My entire body went numb. Slice into my mark? Into Alia? Into the only link keeping her voice from fading out? Alia's murmur crept back, weak and choked. Railway. The door crest flared so intensely that I clutched my chest for a brief second. The side room flashed away again. Corroded tracks. A boarded-up platform. Names scratched into the support pillars. A ticket counter with shattered glass dusting the floor. A dark abyss breathing up through the wooden planks. And an emblem hanging above it. A door opening onto a path. I choked on air. Sienna stepped right in front of me. He needs medical attention before any kind of inquiry. Lucian snapped. He needs evidence. Then grant us time to go get it. Lucian stared her down. You know the deal. If he steps out of this cathedral, he'll be heavily monitored by Ashford forces, under an official iron bench writ. The iron emblem hung dead quiet for 3 excruciating seconds. Then it declared, postponement approved. 24 hours. The respondent may fetch certified rebutting evidence, accompanied by verified guards. Failure to return will mean an automatic guilty ruling, and a warrant for divine apprehension. One day to locate a station from a hallucination. To prove that a goddess hadn't willfully erased her very being, to keep Lucy and Harrow from legally carving right into my soul. I gave a nod, mostly because passing out right there would look pathetic, and it'll likely be weaponized against me, too. Lucian tucked the gilded paperwork out of sight. Splendid, he murmured. Go chase after your little phantom train. He leaned in close, making damn sure his next words were for my ears only. Every hidden deity leaves a tomb behind. Dorian West, I'm dying to see what memories yours still holds. With that, he pulled back, as smooth as a dagger slipping back into its sheath. The metallic emblem dissolved from the wall, and the door sigil carved below my ribs throbbed again. Only this time, the vision came with a clear map. The city's west side, the decaying rail yard district, an old station completely overrun by weeds. And deep beneath Platform B, something ancient and dark slit open an eye. Maverin's token began rattling against my chest, screaming danger rather than throwing me a bone, mainly because Lucy and Harrow was sporting a grin. The second we set off for the railway catacomb, the high table would track us within 24 hours. Sounds pretty generous until a tier 5. Heavyweight smirks like he just handed you a noose. Instead of a lifeline, we bolted from the Basilica before dawn, flanked by an Ashford convoy under strict tribunal watch, with enough bureaucratic heat to make my skin crawl. I was bundled up in a borrowed trench coat, still rocking my shredded rags underneath, proving that apparently, hitting level 5 doesn't grant you a fresh fit. Major design flaw. 0 stars for customer service. Sienna took the shotgun seat of the transport, scanning intel from 3 different court streams at once. Mira sat right next to me, clutching a medical kit, throwing daggers with her eyes whenever I tried scratching at the dressing on. My thumb. Quit messing with that. She snapped. It won't stop bleeding, and it's giving off major plot armor vibes. Pretty sure that's not a real diagnosis. Give it a minute. A compact, slate gray sphere hovered just above Sienna's digital ledger, quietly filming us, a tribunal recording drone. It tagged along because the magistrates demanded results, not sob stories. If we failed to haul back rock-solid proof to clear my name, Lucian had total authority to audit my brand. Every single time that reality hit me, my lungs seized up. A brand audit meant a cold blade cutting through the soul. Mark, via Alia, through me, right behind us. A pair of black cars trailed at a fixed distance for 6 blocks. Sienna stole a glance at the rear view. Golden Dominion surveillance. Wait, can they even shadow us like this? They have every right to use public streets. Fantastic. Love it when killers obey traffic laws. The West Side Rail District seemed like a spot the city tried to wipe from its memory, and pretty much did. Warehouses stood with shattered windows, forgotten tracks cutting through overgrowth. A chain-link fence drooped around. A derelict station missing half of its sign. No sacred banners here. No cathedral crests or gold, just pure rust. Dead quiet, and a platform awning battered by the elements. My door mark throbbed painfully beneath my ribs. Platform B. Alia's voice echoed in my mind. The exact split second I stepped past the fence. Folks departed from this spot, right? By the rails, I assume. Not just by train. Her tone carried that same distant, fractured vibe again. Yet underneath lay a faint quiver of recognition. Dread, and perhaps sorrow. Ashford scouts snipped the padlock gate and entered first. Sienna trailed them, holding the iron bench orb. Mira kept close enough so that if my legs gave out, she could flash me a disappointed look. Right before grabbing me. Once inside, the air reeked of damp timber, grease, and bird droppings. The ticket counters were smashed up, benches flipped upside down, and ancient schedule boards dangled lopsided from above. Someone had coated the far wall in paint ages ago, but it had come off in massive flakes, exposing etched lettering underneath. Names, hundreds of them, gouged out by pocket knives, keys, iron nails, even frantic fingernails. First trek westward, first day of freedom, first train out after the war, first path without him, first transit with my baby. Mira gently grazed one of the inscriptions. These are supplications. Sienna raised her scanner. As the door mark vibrated, I scraped the grime off a structural pillar, until older text emerged from beneath the dirt. To the mother who forged the paths. The entire station seemed to draw breath. Alia stirred a feeling deep inside my chest that cut like a knife. I locked my eyes on the script that they didn't call you Alia. No, she caught her breath. Mother, Mira murmured under her breath. The iron bench or buzzed, capturing footage of the wall. Sienna's gaze suddenly grew intense. This could serve as a counter-record, provided we can prove a historical link. A historical link? I mumbled. Nothing makes pagan devotion quite as thrilling as red tape. Suddenly, Maverin's coin gave off a sharp ping, like an alarm. Those dark vehicles had pulled up out front. We scrambled out of there, following the pole toward Platform B, where wild weeds forced their way through split masonry. A yellow boundary marker still tracked along the ledge. Washed out, but you could still see it. Past that line, H-tracks ran straight into a sealed passageway. The door's sigil pulsed with intense heat right near the middle of the platform. Over there, I pointed. An Ashford sentry managed to wrench up a buckled plank. A draft of freezing air exhaled from the opening. Right below the station floor hit a cramped flight of steps, stretching down into pitch-black space. Figures, since every deity that mattered in this town, had been shoved deep underground, just like some shameful family junk. I stepped down first, way before my nerves could talk me out of it. Beneath Platform B, we stumbled on a tiny vault, constructed around a hidden sacrificial basin. It wasn't bone-dry like that primary shrine of Alias. This structure held pitch-dark water, so motionless it mirrored a sheet of clean crystal. Scattered along the edge were small tributes, tarnished green by time, crumpled transit vouchers, shoe tacks, a military uniform button, a fractured marriage band, and a kid's hair, tie knotted to a corroded key, hovering over the basin. Etched straight into the rock was a gateway leading to a path. My legs nearly buckled underneath me. Sienna pushed the iron bench a bit closer. Dorian, this is the spot. I spotted a degraded ticket stub inside the kiosk. The ledger was incredibly fragile and ruined by mildew. Initial run, one way. No arrival station specified. Merely a vacant space right where tomorrow should have been written. That hit a little too close to home. I placed the stub right on the edge of the basin, then laid down the transcribed names taken from the wall. A solitary boot tack in my own blood, since we were naturally going down that road yet again. Honestly, my thumb should have gone on strike by now. I recited the initial departures kept in memory. Here you go, I muttered. The identities of those who made the journey. Simply because staying behind meant certain death. The pathways they desperately prayed for. The very borders they managed to outlast. The dark, murky water surged just outside. Metal let out a screech. A lone Ashburg sentry barked out. We got contact. A brilliant gold light burst through the ceiling planks above us. Sienna pulled out her piece while Mira snatched up a stray metal pipe. Because pretty obviously, she'd figured candle holders were just a gateway to real violence. The depths replied with a vocal tone. Nothing like Alia's chill, Maverin's coarse chuckle, or that sterile, bureaucratic coldness of Oren's. This particular sound felt like a door blowing open mid-gale. Who waits at the edge demanding passage down the path? That would be me, I answered. Dorian West, a disciple of Alia of the opening stride. The vault shuddered as the vocal entity fell silent, before turning deeply respectful yet enraged, uttering the name Alia. That petty little name still draws blood, Alia. Adrian breathed softly as the dark current rose up in a precise stream, striking the portal emblem etched right below my ribs. Visions flashed of hubs, overpasses, entryways, and backstreets. Doors to courtrooms and platforms for trains. Every single spot where one boundary closed and the next started. Right then agony doubled me over completely. A third emblem materialized right inside Elias's half-moon. A portal. Edrin Dorward acknowledges the ancient pathway. The voice boomed. The gateway step belongs to you. Tiny traveler. Invoke it solely where an actual divide exists. Dare to employ it in a void. And you'll find out firsthand why partitions love devouring idiots. Man, everyone is just so incredibly encouraging. I managed to choke out as the roof split apart. Gilded tethers tore straight through the timber, coiling around the pit room like strands of incandescent cable. Combatants dropped down right along behind them, their features concealed by colorless visors, sleeves stitched with miniature golden symbols of the Dominion scales. One of the Ashburg sentries let off a round. A shimmering gold deflector absorbed the blast, sending him crashing backward straight into the masonry. Sienna gripped my arm. Can you teleport us? Dude, I just got this power 12 seconds ago. Can you move us? I seriously hate reasonable questions. I focused on a fresh door mark, aiming straight for the closest wall. The mark did absolutely nothing. Edrin's voice barked. The threshold, you idiot. Super helpful manual. Gee, thanks. One of the masked men advanced, swinging a gold-trimmed baton at Mira. She ducked, smashed the iron pipe into his knee, and looked kind of surprised when he dropped screaming. Note to self, never piss her off without witnesses around. The edge of the platform, that was the boundary. Snaffling Mira with one hand and Sienna with the other, I stumbled toward the yellow safety line. Above the old tracks, a masked guy lunged at my back. But Maverin's coin chimed, and I dropped half a step too early. His baton sliced through the air right where my spine just was. The yellow line flared black gold beneath my boot. First crossing, I muttered. The entire world split sideways. For one terrifying breath, I wasn't traveling through space. I was stepping directly through the concept of departure. Then we spilled right out into a boarded-up maintenance hallway, tucked behind the old waiting room. I ate dirt, hitting the floor face first, proving that divine teleportation definitely doesn't come with basic dignity. Mira dropped to one knee, while Sienna landed perfectly upright, because of course rich people are trained to fall better. The iron bench orb zipped right after us, still filming. From the other side of the wall, the masked guys yelled, "They're going to find this hallway," Sienna warned. "Then we need to grab the evidence first." The maintenance hallway finished at a broken mural wall. Most of it had been plastered over, but the threshold stone had rattled loose. Behind a panel of decaying wood, there was color. Vibrant, ancient pigment. Not cathedral gold or modern paint, but primeval black-red, stark white, and heavy metallic gold, all framed around a featureless woman, standing dead center on a road that branched into infinite directions. Lesser icons surrounded her. A tumbling coin, a circle of solemn vows, and a door covered in eyes, with other emblems still hidden under the debris. "I couldn't even breathe," Mira whispered. "Maybe that's Alia," I remarked, "or whoever she used to be, before they reduced her to nursery rhymes." Right at the bottom of the artwork, a single golden icon had been defaced. It was nearly wiped clean. Someone had deeply scored the face, the hands, and her name. Yet, what remained was instantly recognizable. A golden balance, a coin, and a book of oaths. Orion Drake. Sienna brought the glowing sphere closer. "He's actually in the painting," brushing grime off the rock face with my sleeve. Even more of the depiction came into view. Orion wasn't standing beside or above the blank-faced woman, and the scene didn't portray a capitulation. He was kneeling below her with his head down, offering both hands like a servant taking an order. Mira went totally quiet. Sienna gasped, freezing for a split second. Right through the hallway wall, those masked thugs began hacking their way in. But I just stared at the painting, finally getting why Lucian had let me flee to this spot. It wasn't just because this place proved Alia was real. It proved Orion had once bowed down. The gold hadn't always been on top. It used to serve what existed before. Those masked enforcers weren't breaching the wall. Like professional hitmen, they smashed through like men desperate to kill evidence. Before that evidence figured out how to talk. The tip of a gold-rimmed nightstick pierced right through the decaying woodwork, just beside the kneeling form of Orion, ripping a massive flake of ancient pigment from the wall. Sienna cursed while Mira clutched the iron-ringed orb, as if it were an infant with legal rights. Meanwhile, I eyed the destruction with the serene, inner stillness of a guy whose entire game plan was currently taking a beating. "Move it," Sienna barked. "But I'm really bonding with this historic landmark." "Dorian, fine, screw culture, I get it." The passageway behind us had a boarded-up service door, half decayed and bound with chains. An actual exit, a proper way out. Finally, this architecture decided to be useful. I clutched the fresh mark beneath my ribs, and Edrin's magic reacted instantly, like a hinge snapping shut right inside my bones. A masked operative burst straight through the partition, a golden shield glowing brightly across his forearm. He lunged for the iron bench, orb ahead of everything else, completely ignoring me, which made the whole game obvious. Winning this skirmish wasn't their goal at all. They were just trying to wipe out any evidence the court could uncover. Maverick's token chimed, and I retreated onto the maintenance doorways. Shattered casing, yanking Mira and Sienna along across the threshold. "Threshold," I commanded, and the locked passage unlocked into a place it had absolutely no business connecting to. We plunged through chilly air and crashed down inside a pitch-black archive room. Tucked behind the mirrored wall, shelving units crammed the cramped layout. Some made of ancient timber, others out of modern steel. Right there was the first red flag. Locking away old history was bad enough on its own, but burying current documentation right alongside, it proved that the conspiracy was still ongoing. The iron bench orb floated lazily in the air, its ash-colored illumination scanning across crates. Zeta Bindus, dust-laden commemorative plates, and a line of office cabinets, stamped with golden Dominion barcodes. Sienna locked her eyes onto the labels. "Those are currently in use." "Well, of course they are," I replied. "Nothing screams we are innocent quite like hiding active paperwork inside a haunted train station wall." Mira wedged the metal rod straight through the door handles, just as the operatives slammed against the opposite side. The initial bash warped the structural casing. "That's not going to last," she warned. "Awesome," I was getting worried we had way too much time on our hands. Sienna pulled open the closest drawer. Inside rested dossiers embossed with polished golden emblems. Recent community welfare, Westward Advancement Campaign, Tier 0, an applicant relief and divine access strategy. The vocabulary sounded pleasant, respectable, and noble. Precisely the kind of corporate buzzwords wealthy sociopaths deploy when they want their corruption to look completely respectable. Sienna unclasped the file and held it beneath the glowing sphere. The cover sheet depicted cheerful households, posing proudly before golden Dominion backdrops. Complimentary dining, applicant guidance. Modest gifts receive communal grace. Sign-ups for low-income areas. She then turned to the next page. The headers shifted prospect identity. Latent breakthrough predicted initial triumph. Original return collection phase. Reallocated fund total silence. The operatives bashed the entrance once more. The conduit warped further. I gazed at the sheet as a cold dread hit my gut. Latent breakthrough predicted initial triumph. Original return. These weren't handouts or unanswered pleas. They were tracking what someone might have turned into. Way before that soul ever got the chance to be it. Mira muttered, "What's an original return?" I loathed the truth before even finding out. Sienna grabbed another record. Looks like capability for grace. Initial advancement, initial commercial triumph. Initial grant, initial healing. Initial sect entry. Her tone grew colder with each phrase. After that, the gathered asset gets moved to upper crust. Wealth reserves the entryway rattled again. A disguised operative barked from outside. Smashed the capture device. Mira glanced my way, Dorian. I get it, but I couldn't budge just yet. Since I'd spotted Henry Ashford's file. His details rested in an upper binder with dark, gilded markers. Way past the welfare documentation. Focused relocation brief. Ashford Henry condition. Premium life path realignment. Associated agreement. Golden Sovereign overhaul beneficiary fund locked. The stamp withstood the metal counterglow, though not enough to conceal the design. Henry was just a premium version of that same heist. Sleeker, flashier, more covert, and if Henry Ashford could be picked apart under an official wealth. Packed what Hope did destitute baseline prospect have. At some local welfare event. Eliah's words echoed deep within me. They seized the initial path. I peeked back at the artwork through a gap in the masonry. Orion bowing before the featureless lady. Underneath his ruined portrait, tiny. Surviving text came to light. Right where the paint had chipped off. Guardian of Bounty passed the trail. Sienna's orb illuminated it, and Mira read the text aloud. Her voice trembling past the trail. I wiped grime off another section with my sleeve, and more phrases emerged. Coin pass crossing. Wealth pass harvest. Success pass path. There it was. Orion hadn't actually triggered the fortune. He was just what showed up after prosperity hit. The voucher, the cash payout. The glitz that folks mistook for the source. Since flashy things are great at baiting suckers. And yeah, sadly, I belonged in that group too. I had practically idolized the guy myself. The door began to give. Sienna crammed documents into a secured evidence bag. We've got plenty for the trial. No, mira counter. Her tone shifted, becoming intensely personal, which felt far worse than fear. She stood before an open cabinet, clutching a single sheet so hard the borders creased. I spotted the name just before she uttered it. Caldwell Evan, Myra's own brother. The record detailed a golden dominion. Wealth campaign from 5 years back. External result. No consecration response. Tier 0 preservation. Local aid wrapped up. Yet the masked text underneath read. Anticipated initial approval. Tier 2 mechanical consecration initiated. Returns collected and moved to town prosperity reserve. Mira turned pale. My brother played by the book. She muttered softly. He spent 2 years preparing. He secured letters of endorsement. After that drive, his tribute tanked, and they never gave him another shot. The space felt tighter. I couldn't crack a joke about that. Certain moments demand quiet, since humor would just be cowardice. Asporting a ridiculous capítulo. Mira packed the document with trembling hands and tucked it beneath the metal seat. Orb, scan it, she ordered. The device buzzed. Footage showed the utility door blowing inward. Golden light poured into the archives. The leading operative in a mask rushed, heading straight for Mira and the file bag. I reacted without thinking, which is usually how my worst mistakes come to life. The space had shelving, frames for doors, gaps in cabinets, the seam between old hardwood, and the newer steel flooring plates, gateways. Tiny, ugly ones, but real. I gripped the shelf frame and yanked. Gateway step. It ripped me sideways through a space between 2 units. I popped out right next to the operative, tackling him shoulder first. knocking both of us hard into a filing cabinet. Did it look heroic? Not a chance. Did it hurt him more than me? Barely, but hey, a win's a win. Sienna let off 2 rounds. Her bullets slammed against golden deflector fields, but it still pushed the operatives back. Mira swung her pipe at the guy closest to the sphere, driven by the pure, focused fury of someone who just discovered her family's stolen destiny. Locked in an archive drawer, I snatched up the evidence bag and the iron bench sphere. We gotta go, Sienna yelled. Find me a gateway that doesn't drop us into a death trap. Edrin's sigil flared with pain. The old maintenance hallway had another exit further up, partially obscured by a pile of wooden crates. Past it, I could sense open skies and rails. The edge of a platform. I reached out for Mira. She wouldn't budge. Mira. She was frozen, staring at the files full of names. Hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. All those lives reduced to metrics. Funding pools, statuses, and corporate charity talk. I grab her arm. We grab what we can fit. Then we make them pay for the rest. Her gaze snapped over to me. For the first time since our paths crossed, Mira looked less doubtful and a lot more lethal. Promise me, she demanded. That was a pretty dumb thing to ask. A guy who'd spent the last 48 hours accidentally turning pledges into magical catastrophes. But I said it anyway. I promise. My orange ring went icy. The pact had locked in. Brilliant. No sweat, we charged the hidden entryway side by side. Initial crossing, I murmured. Reality buckled. We crashed out onto the main concourse amid a shower of dark, glittering embers, just as the final Ashford guard outside was brought to his knees by a shimmering tether. The masked operatives hot on our heels tried to follow, but the gateway slammed shut before they could make it. For one brief, beautiful moment, I thought we were home free. Right then, every single station exit flared with a golden light. The tunnel mouth, the perimeter fence, even the smashed turnstile, even the gaps between the train cars parked on the siding, glowed with faint metallic lines. Those masked agents weren't behind this. It was far too seamless, too total. A deliberate clap resounded from the far end of Platform B. Lucian Harrow stepped out from behind an old signal post, his pristine overcoat completely untouched by the grime, his pale amber eyes locked on the evidence bag in my grip. Splendid work, he remarked. You uncovered the vault. Sienna raised her firearm. Back off. This iron bench. Recording is impounded evidence. Lucian glanced toward the sphere. I have absolutely no desire to destroy it. That was the worst thing he could have said. I gulped. You already knew this was here. Fragments of it. Lucian surveyed the dilapidated station around us, with a look bordering on wistfulness. The former structure was clumsy, but it wasn't completely wrong. Mira stepped forward, her voice trembling with rage. You ripped off my brother. Lucian looked her way, and for the briefest moment, his smirk vanished. No, Miss Caldwell. Your brother held a spark that was never realized. He couldn't manifest it. The Dominion simply reallocated it to a fund that generated clear benefits for thousands of people. Myra's weapon shook in her grasp. You destroyed his life. Lucian's eyes shifted from her to me, and then he uttered the words that changed this entire conflict from being merely about stolen files. You consider a crime, solely because you still believe that every new dawn belongs to the soul who carries it. Lucian locked down every pathway with a golden seal, and I finally realized the true gap between reaching rank 5 and actually staying alive. A guy who'd been stuck at rank 5 long enough to grow totally numb to killing. Those golden lines stretching across the station weren't just sealing the doorways. They completely owned them. The tunnels opening, the gated fence, the smashed ticket counter, even the spaces between the old train cars sitting on the tracks. Everything radiated a faint, flawless glow. Every single exit I could have breached using Edrin's gift was bound tight by a golden noose. Lucian was posted up at the far end of Platform B. Crisp jacket, serene expression, with his hands clasped behind his back, looking like a teacher managing a disastrous field trip. You call it stealing, he remarked, simply because you still fancy that every origin belongs to whoever is born with it. Mira tightened her grip on the metal pipe. I could feel her urge to take a swing, and honestly, same. But my own chest was already tearing apart from Alia, Maverin, Orin, and Edrin all tearing me in opposite directions. While Lucian looked like he'd just gotten a full 8 hours, enjoyed a nice breakfast, and squeezed my public execution right between 2 meetings. Sienna raised the evidence container, the metallic sphere hovering right by her side, its gray glow pulsing against the golden enchantments. This proof is protected under the Witness Security Act, she declared. Lucian cast a quick look at the sphere, then let the witness observe. The massive gulf between evidence and its analysis. He flicked a single finger, and the platform worked. It didn't shatter or blow apart. It just shifted. The decayed plank beneath my right foot dropped half an inch the exact second I tried to step. My ankle twisted, sending a sharp jolt of pain up my leg. And Lucien covered 30 feet of ground before I could even recover my footing. Maverin's coin flared violently within my chest. I ducked just as Lucien's gloved hand swept above me, slicing a golden streak right through the air where my throat had just been. He wielded no blade, just his bare hand. The elite had mastered high-tier slabbing. How cute. I grabbed onto the yellow safety line of the platform and attempted a quick threshold leap to the side. The line flared gold, totally jammed. Lucien's knee slammed straight into my ribs, blinding my vision. I crashed back into a corroded bench, hitting it hard enough to snap it right in two. The evidence container slid away across the concrete. Mira dived to grab it, but a glowing gold cord lassoed her ankle and jerked her flat. Mira, I bellowed. Sienna let fly 3 rounds. Lucien didn't even bother to look. Each slug veered off by a few inches and embedded itself in the wooden deck behind him. That creeped me out way more than a shield. Shields are just defense. This was manipulating timing itself. With polite hostility, Lucien closed the distance. Rank merely reflects potential, Mr. West, not expertise. I coughed, tasting copper, and propped myself up on elbow. Sounds like a line you rehearsed. In front of a mirror. I've delivered it to plenty of young disciples. Did they all despise you? The survivors learned. That golden tether around Myra's leg kept dragging her toward the platform edge. She jammed the iron pipe into the planks, gritting her teeth, refusing to make sound. Sienna lunged to snatch the evidence bag, but the golden seal encasing the depot flared, causing the iron bench orb to sputter. Signal blocked, the sphere droned. Lucien looked mildly amused. This terminal is locked down by Dominion decree. Nothing leaves until I determine the official status of your discovery. Orion's ring turned ice cold. A grid of unseen jurisdiction spread across the deck. It wasn't precisely a document. It resembled the bare scaffolding of a legal title. I caught it for a split second. Derelict transit asset, public thoroughfare, emergency sovereign quarantine. Delegated powers invoked under Orion administration. Just the same old scam in a different package. He's exploiting the capitulation logs to seize the place. I wheezed. Sienna's gaze whipped to me. Can you override it? Hey, I'm open to tips from the deities. Currently crashing in my chest. Orin's tone sharpened, sounding like a pact sliced open with a blade. A counterfiling demands witnesses. Lucien cocked his head. He caught just enough to realize I deciphered something. Then he stomped right on my wrist. The agony was instant and degrading. Bones crunched against timber, and my fingers locked open. The dark golden symbols beneath my skin flared up, as Lucien's own gold bore down hard on top of them. Elia's crescent shape wavered for one terrifying moment, her voice fading away as Lucien leaned in closer. This is exactly why checking the mark is mandatory. You're holding onto a power you can't even comprehend. I attempted to fire back with a clever comeback, but all that managed to slip out was a choked up. Your shoe is really intense. He increased the pressure. The crescent fractured with a distinct snapping noise, audible only to me, causing Elia to choke back a breath within me. A sickening sensation unlocked deep in my chest. Pure terror flooded through me instead of any actual power. If he shattered the mark right here, Elia wouldn't just have a clean death. She would fall completely silent once more. All of those names, all of those initial paths, and all those stolen starts in life would just end up as files in some cabinet or paint covered up on a wall. I won't accept that outcome. Maverin's token chimed, a single tone directing my gaze right past Lucien, straight toward the evidence bag, toward Mira, and toward the documented testimonies. I gave up trying to wrench my wrist out of his grip and reached for the oath instead, the one Owen had uncovered back in the archive room. We salvage whatever we can manage to hold, and then we hold them accountable for everything else. Owen, I breathed softly, invoke the pledge. The binding ring glowed a scorching black. The pages from Myra's case file burst right out of the evidence pouch, as if caught in a sudden gust. The name Evan Caldwell gleamed in a dim gray light, radiating from the iron bench sphere, and then subsequent files unsealed one after another. Hundreds of identities cascaded all over the stage, in glowing beams of light. Tier 0 prospects, botched sacrifices, plundered beginnings, and diverted reserves. Mira glanced up from the boundary line, her eyes flashing with anger. Sienna was the first to catch on. She snatched the sphere and yelled, "Iron bench, register every named individual as a potential injured witness in a disputed Case of holy larceny. The sphere flickered wildly against the golden disruption. Lucian's gaze finally turned intense and focused. Watch your step, Miss Ashford. Sienna bared her teeth in a vicious grin. People only tell you to watch your step when they're terrified. That the process actually works. The train tracks far below platform B responded with dark liquids bursting up through the gaps in the planks, streaming up in slender streaks like ink, seeking out ancient channels. The names etched into the timber started radiating light. Names of travelers, names of casualties. Casualties who had pleaded for their initial paths. Folks whose initial paths had been ripped away before they could even reach them. Elia murmured, they don't need to bow down. I realized right then they were onlookers, not disciples. I struck my empty hand hard against the floor. I summoned every stolen start right here. I declared, my speech trembling. Yet it carried every initial breakthrough. First healing, first business. First path, first shot, first existence. That was stolen to fuel someone else's wealth. Lucian raised his arm, and a heavy golden force slammed down. My eyes grew blurry as the surrounding planks shattered. The symbol on my chest seared like a hot iron. Yet those names kept shining. One by one, cries started drifting from the terminal. They emerged as faint, almost otherworldly reverberations. A young boy breathing that he'd worked hard. A lady recounting how she'd scrimped every cent. A repairman demanding to know why his prayer went unanswered. Evan Caldwell's name flared up so fiercely. That Mira let out a sharp gasp and immediately choked it back with her hand. Lucian's binding boundaries shook just a bit, but when facing him a bit, felt like making it through a wreck by ticking off the vehicle. Edrin, I choked out. The platform's lip, beneath Lucian's boot, remained locked in gold. But the division between the old depot floor and the recent Dominion barrier was substantial, harsh, and genuine. Genuine, a boundary between reality and pretense. I forced my way through. Reality skewed completely sideways. I didn't break out. I materialized behind Lucian, clumsily, nearly collapsing, my shoulder throbbing, but functional enough to seize the evidence pack. With my mangled hand and booted over to Sienna, Mira brought the iron rod crashing down with full force. She targeted the golden string bound to her ankle. Missing Lucian, the cord snapped instead. Sienna snatched the bag and rammed it into the orb's glow. The sphere flashed iron gray. Witness threshold verified. Lucian finally turned around. He moved rapidly, way too fast. He jabbed 2 fingers right into my chest. My faction crest almost shattered completely. I heard Elias shriek. A dark gold radiance erupted from my shirt. The coin, the band, and the gateway all swirled around the crescent, seemingly desperate to keep it intact. Fueled by sheer panic and malice, I sank to my knees. Lucian loomed over me, his composure now shattered. Well, not entirely. Guys like him probably paid top dollar to ditch their feelings. But his facade had cracked. You're throwing away energy on folks who never amounted to anything, he muttered. I glared up at him through blood and terminal dust. No, ikuntarat. You robbed them of the chance to try. Elias's essence drifted through me, feeble, livid, and no longer isolated. The ancient sacrificial pit below platform B bellowed. The blank-faced woman from the painting materialized. Above the terminal, still fractured, still unfinished, but far more massive now. Circling her, the tumbling coin, the oath ring, and the gateway blazed with dark gold. The station shuddered, the gold crests sealing the exits, splintered into a web of fine fractures. The secondary seal emerged below the platform as a ring of interlocking sigils, partly obscured by murky water and corroded tracks. It didn't give way entirely, but ruptured. A fissure tore through the crest, unleashing a flood of light. The woman's shadow raised, her head for the very first time. Where her gaze should have been, 2 pitch-black voids opened up. The iron counter orb shrieked with interference. Partial seal rupture detected. Lucian backed away. He wasn't beaten yet. Nothing with Lucian was ever that simple. He was just pivoting. It's the kind of move a man makes when a situation gets a lot pricier than anticipated. Right then, the fractured emblem beneath the floor cast a single line of text into midair. Heed the warning. Beware the child of stolen gold. Instantly, every single voice in the station went dead silent. Mira just stood there, staring at the omen, while Sienna lowered her weapon just a fraction. Hell, even Lucian wiped the smirk off his face. I stayed down on my knees, clutching my burning chest. As it hit me, the seal wasn't trying to warn us about Lucian. It was flashing a red flag about someone completely different. The ominous words hovered right over platform B, almost as if the station itself had suddenly figured out how to threaten people. Beware the child of stolen gold. Nobody moved a muscle. Mira, Sienna, those battered Ashford guards. And yeah, even Lucian and Harrow were totally frozen, which was a terrible sign because if the bad guy freezes up too, that usually means whatever's coming his way. Above everyone's pay grade. I remained on my knees, pressing one hand hard against my sternum, trying to stop my faction, marked from completing, its dramatic little habit of tearing itself wide open. My wrist was throbbing, my ribs felt completely rearranged, and my dignity had straight up left during the brawl, probably hiding under some bench nearby. Lucian's pale gold eyes flicked away from the warning, landing on the iron bench orb. The device was still active barely. Its dull gray light shimmered right through the golden interference, capturing the fractured remnants. The secondary seal, the names of the victims, the required witness count, and Lucian's incredibly casual justification that stealing people's origins was pretty much just high-level philanthropy with superior bookkeeping. Sienna clocked the exact same thing. She raised the evidence pouch with trembling hands and barked, "Iron Bench confirm." Live recording. The orb sputtered and sparked. For one terrifying second, I was sure it was going to die. But then, an iron-gray ring materialized right above the platform. Massive, flat, and looking like a courtroom door forged out of storm clouds. Live recording confirmed. The automated iron bench voice droned. Witness threshold successfully recognized. Prosperity drained. Victim logs verified. Golden Dominion. Containment protocol claimed. Containment protocol claimed. Containment protocol is being contested. Lucian didn't show any fear. Guys like him never lose their cool out in the open. They just adjust their strategy and straighten up. Except those glowing gold bands around the hub. We're closing in way too fast, revealing everything. He was terrified, though definitely not of me. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. One heavy cough, and I'd have ended up as a new wall ornament. For the station, no, he dreaded the remaining evidence. Mira forced her body up to stand. Her legs still black and blue from the metallic restraint. Evan Caldwell's glowing digital dossier hovered right by her shoulder. My own brother is named in those documents, she declared, her throat sounding completely trashed. Repeat those words. Tell everyone here how practical it was. Lucian stared her down, and for once in his life, he didn't snap back. With a quick reply, and that hesitation felt far more satisfying than any witty comeback I could manage. Sienna moved out front, stating that the defense demands immediate authentication of the recovered cult relics, the transit log integrity, and the legal status of the survivor. You managed to make a last-ditch plea sound incredibly classy. Zip it and focus on looking gracefully near death. She fired back. It helps the vibe. Fair point. I'd basically turned into a breathing piece of Exhibit A. The metallic jury sphere pivoted toward the historical sacrifice, chasm directly underneath the floorboards. Proper validation requires complete integration of the speaker. Lucian lifted a hand as golden energy pooled at his fingertips, looking sharper than ever. If you push this issue, he warned, you're going to turn an ancient holy site into a massive civil war. I choked out a laugh and grinned, since it was obvious my self-preservation drive had totally quit. Dude, you literally ran a charity gig built on stolen lives. So I'd say this massive civil war is a pretty done deal already. Lucian's glare went cold as the energy fired straight at the sphere. Maverin's token let out a chime so intense. It made my jaw ache. I lunged without even trying to stand. It wasn't exactly a majestic move, more like a cornered beast panicking. But it got me there. My hand slammed onto the floor split, where dark, murky water was swirling beneath the wood, and I poured every single bit of power I had into that nasty little dividing line, invoking Alia's initial trail, Maverin's gateway, and Orin's formal testimony. Plus idris doorway. The golden flash blasted the exact spot the target had occupied, except the sphere wasn't just hovering over the floor anymore. It materialized for just a brief second, at every single boundary line that had been a backdrop to those stolen beginnings. The station gateway, the edge of the platform, the old utility door, the filing cabinet drawer, the rim of the well, and that yellow boundary line, where folks had departed home, praying they wouldn't fall apart. The light ray cut straight through the open air, and the iron bench sphere materialized once more over the well. Even more radiant now. Edrin's voice giggled from within. My frame feels better, but yours is still messy. Man, tough crowd, I wheezed. The ancient, engraved names of voyagers lit up, glowing like black gold along the girders. And then, the pilfered identities answered back. They weren't apparitions or whole lives, but observers. Evan Caldwell, Henry Ashford, Maribel Torres, Jonah Pike. Hundreds more taken from the records. Thousands resurrected from the depths. Individuals who never even realized what had been stripped away, whose initial paths had been plundered, long before they could even learn to despise the culprit. Mira pressed her blood-stained palm against her brother's projected name. I bear witness, she declared. Sienna held up the evidence bag. The Ashford Council stands as witness. A wounded sentinel dragged his body upright and placed his palm against a luminous Voyager name, etched into a pillar. I bear witness. Right then, the iron bench ring above us started expanding. Though the terminal wasn't packed with people, it felt tightly packed regardless. The sheer gravity of invisible names burdened the air, until Lucian's shimmering golden sigils started fracturing. The voice from the bench announced, restored. Veneration verified. Historical continuity verified. Victim witness status confirmed. Golden sovereignty conditionally acknowledged. Quashing and collection logs recorded. Lucian's look turned sharp. Conditionally? Sienna shot back, enough to halt an immediate execution. The terminal shuddered. The featureless woman hovering over the platform raised her gaze. Her eyes remained dark, mere unfinished shapes. But now she was watching. Truly watching. Alia's voice resonated through the well, rippling through me and through those names. I haven't vanished. The second seal beneath Platform B shifted. At first, it resisted like a rusted lock. As golden fractures tried to hold it shut, dark water spilled over the edges. An ancient rail shrieked, as though the entire station recalled every departure. All at once, I dragged myself forward, pulling a ruined wrist behind me. What do you need? I muttered. Alia replied, sounding fainter than I hoped, yet more powerful than she had ever been. Acknowledgement. I let out a solitary laugh, winded and bitter. The single thing I'm freakishly good at provoking. I looked up toward the ring of iron benches. At the victims, Mira and Sienna, the broken guards, Lucian, and the hidden depths listening beneath our feet. I acknowledge Alia of the first step. I declared, she is no surrendered relic, nor some nursery blunder, and she was never just a ruined footnote in Orion's flawless golden ledger. The air grew heavy. Lucian took a step forward. Dorian, that was the very first time. He actually sounded like he wanted me to quit. So, naturally, I kept pressing on. I recognized the mother who forged the roads, the original path before the prize, the true origin before the gold. The station split wide with a dark, golden glow. The second seal gave way. It didn't detonate. It fractured like a deadbolt, finally conceding that it had lost the fight. Golden barriers woven through the station snapped. One after another, the exit gates forced open. The tunnel entrance went pitch black, and the maintenance doors flew wide. Every ensnared boundary caught a sudden breath of freedom. Lucian retreated once more, and this time, nobody missed it. The voice from the iron bench echoed across Platform B. Second seal breach confirmed. The iron bench broadcast persisted. Now harsher. Immediate evaluation of the mark is suspended. Dominion custody claims for this location are rejected, pending a full review. Railway archive records are secured under iron bench decree. Right above the well, the silhouette of the faceless woman came into focus. Her eyes snapped wide, pitch black and primordial, yet the precise spot where her true identity belonged stayed totally vacant, a scar shaped by absent text. Suddenly, the UI holographic projection flared mid-air. Rank 6 pathway, unfinished. Prerequisite, 3 seals broken. Current broken seals, 2 divinity. Rank 5 retained. I gaped at the notification. Retained? I gasped out. Oh, love being told I didn't level up. After practically getting premium tier assassinated. Mira let out a choked sound that might have been a laugh. Or honestly, maybe a sob. Sienna wasn't laughing at all. She was glaring right at Lucian. So, she demanded, her tone freezing over, is the Golden Dominion going to persist with this summary execution attempt? Right in front of the iron bench. Lucian glanced from the shattered seal to the floating orb, then finally at me for a beat. The battle-hardened rank 5 elite of the Golden Dominion seemed genuinely ticked off. He didn't look beaten so much as just thoroughly annoyed, which in its own messed-up way was completely terrifying. You haven't won anything, he spat. Pushing myself up, I managed to prop my back against a ruined bench. Usually, winning hurts a lot less than this. Lucian calmly straightened one of his gloves. You've bought yourself status. You bought time. You bought an audience. His gaze locked onto mine. But you've also set off alarms you can't possibly comprehend. A rift of golden light tore open behind him, shaping a flawless gateway where nothing had been a second ago. Edrin snarled deep inside my sigil. A stolen threshold. Lucian took a step backward, vanishing into it. Have fun with your little trial, Dorian West. The Dominion will strike back with a champion worthy of the very gold you've degraded. Then the golden portal snapped shut. The entire station seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. For a second, I actually believed this immediate crisis was finally over. But right then, Elias's font began glowing gold. It was a pure, arrogant shade of gold. Unbelievably opulent. Every single mark beneath my flesh cringed. Mira stumbled backward, while Sienna aimed her rifle at the well, as if she intended to open fire on a mere reflection. Honestly, though, that perfectly tracked with my own mood. The iron bench sphere suddenly emitted a sharp hum. Warning, unapproved high-tier tribute well connection detected. My stomach plummeted straight through the station floor. Each pool of dark water turned into a mirror. The railroad well, also known as Chapel Well, miles away, and thousands of golden Dominion sacrifice wells across the nation, merged into a single, impossible transmission. A voice resonated through the station. It wasn't Lucian's, nor did it sound human. It felt warm like cash, smooth as a signed contract, and so massive that my knees wanted to buckle before my brain could tell them. No way in hell. Or I and Drake. Citizens of this realm, the divine voice boomed. A wicked twist of fate has been brought to light. My throat went dry. The amber water revealed a cathedral I've only ever read about in books. Gilded columns. A huge offering well shaped like a fallen crown. Clergymen in white and gold robes, encircling a ring brimming with stolen radiance. And kneeling dead center was a young guy. Dark hair, a sharp profile, and a serene expression. Carter Blaine. My breath caught. The actual main character. The golden boy destined to rise much later. Way down the line after all the trials, arcs, rivalries, and roadblocks. The whole hero's journey package. Instead, he was kneeling in a ritual circle as beams of light flooded into him. From every connected well. That light wasn't just gold. They were new beginnings. I could recognize them now, since Elia had shown me what theft truly looked like. First breakthroughs, first recoveries, first packs, first innovations, first getaways, and tiny, unbelievable strokes of luck, plundered from countless souls, and pumped into a single body like fuel. Alia breathed, utterly appalled. That power is torn from destiny. Carter's spine flexed. The gilded reservoir behind him shrieked. A status screen materialized above his head. Golden vessel candidate. Artificial divinity calibration. Rank. Ascension in progress. I tried to stand up, but my limbs gave out. Carter, I muttered. Mira glanced at me. You recognize him? I swallowed hard. The worst possible timing. The actual fact of the matter was, he was meant to be the main champion. What I actually claimed was that he was just a potential prospect. Orion's declaration carried on, echoing louder now. Dorian West, harborer of illicit origins, tainter of sacred lineage, adversary of rightful inheritance. The radiant transmission shifted focus from a populace and straight toward me as Carter Blaine opened his eyelids. They gleamed gold, but right behind them, for a brief flash, I couldn't quite discern if the soul staring back was Carter, Orion, or an entity caught in the middle. The interface shifted, revising the divinity rank. Rank 5 designation, Golden Vessel Contender. Designated objective, Dorian West. The third internal seal within. My sigil snapped closed so violently I shrieked. It bolted tight rather than fracturing or concealing itself. A dark system. Warning blazed over the shimmering golden backdrop. Golden Vessel triggered. Objective, Dorian West. Coordinates for the third seal secured. Carter's gilded gaze remained locked onto my own. Across the chasm, and the book's destined protagonist smirked.